They gave this man the body of an orphan and the soul of one of the most terrifying creature to ever exist in anime history and said good luck. He absorbed a tailed beast, ripped the ghost of the Uchiha out of existence, and he broke the fucking moon. Nobody asked him to, he just felt like it, and it's glorious.
The moonlight over Konoha had a particular shade that night, the kind of pale silver that made every leaf glitter and every shadow look longer than it should. In a clearing beyond the training grounds, a 10-year-old boy stood alone, with his hands tucked into the pockets of a jacket that had been pressed and folded with too much care for a child's hands to manage. He was waiting. He had been waiting for 9 minutes. Naruto Uzumaki adjusted his collar, smoothed a wrinkle that did not exist, and tilted his head slightly to one side. The first chakra signature had brushed against his senses an hour ago. The second, a moment later. By the time the 11th elite root Anbu had arrived in the surrounding tree line, he had already counted them, ranked them, and decided the order in which he would dismantle them. "You may begin whenever you find your courage," he said into the open air. His voice was a child's voice, but the cadence belonged to something far older. Slow, even, as if every syllable had been chosen and weighed before it left his mouth. "I have no intention of standing in this field forever." The trees moved. 11 shapes burst from every angle at once. Above, below, north, south, east, west, 4 at the diagonals. Their masks caught the moon. Their blades caught the moon. Their chakra was layered in suppression seals so thick most jonin would have missed them entirely. Naruto did not look up. The air around him hummed. An invisible shell of compressed energy bloomed outward from his skin in a single instant. And the 11 elite Anbu met it as a wall of metal and bone meets a falling mountain. Wakizashi blades exploded into fragments. Kunai twisted in midair and bent back on themselves. The Anbu themselves were thrown. 8 of them slammed into trees so hard the trunks cracked from base to canopy. 2 struck stone outcroppings and folded. 1 landed on his back in the grass and stayed there, breathing in short, stuttered pulses. The boy in the clearing had moved exactly the muscles required to keep his head upright. "That was the first wave," Naruto said. He turned his head a few degrees. "Will there be a second? I would hate to think Danzo sent 11 children to abduct the future without preparing a contingency." There was a second wave. It came from the only Anbu who had survived the first cleanly. The commander, the man wearing a hawk mask with the right eye slit painted black. He had been hanging from a branch above the clearing, suppressing his presence so far below the floor of detectable chakra that he registered as a piece of bark. He dropped now in absolute silence, blade coated in lightning chakra, aimed for the spine. Naruto raised one finger. A thin line of purple light, no thicker than a sewing needle, traveled from the tip of his index finger through the commander's chest, through the trees behind him, through a wooden water tower 300 meters past the trees, through a stone hill behind the water tower, and continued out into the night for over a mile before it lost coherence and faded into the deep blue. The hole in the commander was the diameter of a coin. He landed on the grass and never got up. The sound caught up half a second later, a soft, almost apologetic crack, as if a branch had snapped somewhere far away. One Anbu was still alive, the youngest. He had been the support runner, the kid in the mask, no older than 15, and he had landed on his side after striking a tree. He was on one knee now. His mask had cracked down the middle. One eye was visible through the break. The eye was wide. Naruto walked to him. He did not hurry. There was no reason to hurry. He covered the ground between them in 7 steps, and on the 7th step, his hand was already lifting, fingers loose, palm open, the way a man might reach for a doorknob. The hand closed around the young Anbu's neck. Green light filled the clearing. It pulsed from the points of contact between Naruto's palm and the boy's throat. Once, twice, then a steady draining hum like a tea kettle held just below boiling. The young Anbu tried to scream. He managed half a syllable. The rest of the sound traveled up his throat and stopped at Naruto's grip and was pulled back down into him and out of him through the wrong direction. Witnesses, had there been any conscious enough to watch, would have seen the boy's hair turn from black to white in 3 breaths. They would have seen his skin draw tight against his bones. They would have seen the muscles of his arms thin to ropes, then to threads, then to nothing. By the time Naruto opened his fingers, the body that fell to the grass weighed less than the mask it wore. Naruto brushed a single speck of dust from the cuff of his jacket. "At last," he murmured. A slight warm-up, nothing more. He turned and walked toward the village. He never looked back at the bodies. The wind picked up behind him and moved through the trees like an apology. Hiruzen Sarutobi had been Hokage for so many years that he no longer believed anything could surprise him. He had survived 3 shinobi wars, 2 assassination attempts, and the night the Nine Tails had ripped his successor's child in half in the womb of a dying woman. He had buried friends, students of students, and a wife. He had read every report that crossed his desk for 30 years and assumed that the worst thing on it would be familiar. The report on his desk that morning was the first thing in a decade to make him set his pipe down. 11 root ambu, 7 dead in the field, 3 dying on the way to medical, 1 missing, presumed dust. The mission file had been signed by Danzo Shimura's own hand, and the failure of that mission had been signed by the hand of a 10-year-old boy. The 10-year-old boy in question was sitting across from him now. Naruto Uzumaki had not been offered tea, but he was holding a cup of it anyway. He had asked Hiruzen's secretary for it on the way in. The secretary had been so unsettled by the request that she had brought it without thinking. And now Naruto was sipping it with the patience of a man who had nowhere in particular to be. "You understand," Hiruzen said at last, "that this is going to be difficult to explain." "I have full faith in your ability to lie to your council," Naruto replied. "You have been doing it for 40 years. The pipe stayed on the desk." Naruto: "Hokage-sama, what did you do to those men?" The boy lowered the cup. He was small for his age, skinny. The orange jacket he had worn since he was 4 was gone, replaced by something he had clearly altered himself. Black sleeves, a high collar, a green panel at the chest that resembled nothing the village had produced. His eyes were the color of an unbroken sky in winter. There was something behind them that did not belong to a child. "I gave them what they came for," Naruto said. "An audience with me. I cannot help it if the audience proved fatal to most of them." Hiruzen's hand tightened on the desk. "Danzo will deny he sent them." "Of course he will. He is, on his best day, a coward who has never once apologized for a decision he made in the dark. I have no expectation that he will start now." Naruto raised the cup again. "I do, however, have an expectation that you will manage him. Otherwise, he and I will have a conversation, and I cannot guarantee the version of him that emerges from that conversation will be capable of breathing." Hiruzen looked at the boy for a long moment. "Who are you?" The question came out before he meant to ask it. He had not intended to ask it. He had intended to discuss the report, to issue a warning, to remind a child of his place. The question slipped out the way blood slips out of a wound the moment the bandage is loosened. Naruto smiled. It was a small smile. A polite one. The kind of smile someone gives to a host whose dinner has been only adequate. "I am Naruto Uzumaki," he said. "I am your village's Jinchuriki. I am the last unsealed reservoir of the Nine Tails chakra and the orphan you swore to your successor you would protect. All of that is true. But what you are asking, Hokage-sama, is something else." He set the cup on the desk. He folded his hands. He leaned forward, only a few inches, but the air in the room changed. Hiruzen Sarutobi, a man who had stood across from Hashirama Senju as a child and felt nothing, found himself unable to draw a full breath. "What I am," Naruto said, "is the most perfect organism this world has ever housed. I have lived before. I have died before. I have come back from less than a single cell, and I will come back from less again, every time, until the end of everything that ends. The Nine Tails was a small contribution to a body that would have been sufficient without him. The shinobi system you have built around me is an amusing collection of imperfect chakra expenditure, and you, sir, are the closest thing this village has to a man I respect, which is why I have allowed you to ask the question once." He picked the cup back up. "Do not ask it again." Hiruzen Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage, god of shinobi, sat very still. After a long moment, he picked up his pipe. "What do you want, Naruto?" I want to be left alone until I want otherwise, the boy said. I want to graduate the academy at my own pace and on my own terms. I want to be deployed for missions that interest me and ignored by you when none of them do. I want Danzo Shimura to understand by whatever language he speaks fluently that the next attempt on my person will end his career and possibly his species. The Hokage exhaled. And in exchange, Naruto said, I will refrain from flattening this village. He did not say it like a threat. He said it like a man reading the weather. Hiruzen nodded once. Get out of my office. With pleasure. The boy rose. He walked to the door. He paused at the threshold and turned the way a guest might turn to thank a host. I would also like a team, he said. When the time comes, my own team. I have already selected my preferred members. I will provide a list. He shut the door behind him. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his chair and stared at the closed door for a very long time. Then he picked up the report. Then he set it down. Then he reached for the first time in months for the bottle of sake he kept hidden in the bottom drawer. 3 years passed. They were strange years. The kind of years a village does not know what to do with. The boy did not act out. He did not destroy property. He did not pull pranks or paint the Hokage monument or shout obnoxious things in the street. He attended the academy. He sat in the back. He answered every question correctly when called upon, in fewer words than the question deserved. He did the homework. He passed the exams. He also, on a Tuesday in his 3rd year, levitated 3 feet off the ground during a chakra control lesson and remained there for the duration of the class while Iruka pretended he could not see him. When asked afterward to come down, the boy looked mildly puzzled. I am at an elevation that suits me, he said. Continue with your lesson. Iruka chose to leave the issue alone. There were rumors. There were always rumors. Some of the older shinobi spoke of the night in the clearing, most of them in voices low enough to be missed, because the kind of voice that carried that story carried it once and then never spoke of it again. A few of the academy children tried, in the way bullies always try, to take a swing at the orphan kid in the back row. The first one ended up with a sprained wrist he could not explain. The second one came home weeping and refused to say why. The third one did not come home at all that night. He turned up in the morning, fine, nothing visibly wrong, except that he refused to go anywhere near a window for the next 6 weeks. By the time graduation rolled around, Naruto Uzumaki had a reputation that no one in the village would say out loud, and every adult in the village knew about. He graduated at the top of the class. The Hokage himself signed the headband. The team rosters were posted the next morning. Iruka stood at the front of the room and called them out. Team after team. Names matched to names. Sensei matched to teams. He read the slip for Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Naruto Uzumaki, under Kakashi Hatake. And at the sound of his own name on that list, the boy in the back row lowered his book and rose to his feet. Iruka-sensei. The room went still. Yes, Naruto? I will not be on Team 7. Sasuke turned in his seat. Sakura turned in hers. The rest of the class did not turn at all, because the rest of the class had learned over the past 3 years that turning toward Naruto Uzumaki was a way to draw his attention, and drawing his attention was an experience most of them preferred to avoid. Iruka cleared his throat. The teams are assigned by the Hokage, Naruto. They are not negotiable. Everything is negotiable, Naruto said. If one of the parties at the table cannot be killed. He walked up the aisle. He took the slip from Iruka's hand. He read it. He set it down on the desk with great gentleness, as if it were a small, dead thing he did not want to disrespect. I will not be slowed down, he said, to no one in particular and to everyone in the room, by an emo with a superiority complex he is too poorly equipped to support, and a banshee who has mistaken volume for competence. Sasuke stood up. What did you call me? Naruto turned his head a few degrees. I called you correctly, he said. If the description offends you, the issue is the description's accuracy and not its choice of vocabulary. Sit down, Uchiha. I am leaving. He walked out of the classroom without waiting for permission. The door shut behind him. Sakura Haruno, for once in her life, said nothing. Sasuke remained standing for a long moment. His hands were clenched at his sides. His Sharingan was not yet awake. He was 13, and he had not yet bled the right kind of blood to call it forward. but something behind his eyes was burning, and it was the first warning of a hatred he would carry for the rest of his short, miserable life. The Hokage's office had become a regular destination. Hiruzen had stopped offering tea. Naruto had stopped accepting it. "You cannot keep refusing assignments," the Hokage said. I have, I will continue to. You will be assigned a team. You will be a genin. You will work missions like every other shinobi in this village. I will be assigned a team I find tolerable. I will accept missions worth my time. The rest of your standard procedure can be applied to someone else." Hiruzen rubbed his temple. Anko Mitarashi. The boy's head tilted. Continued. "She is unattached. She has no team. She is a special jonin, T&I division, formerly Orochimaru's apprentice, has a low patience threshold for nonsense and no fear of yours. She will not idolize you. She will not flinch from you. She will probably try to kill you within the first week and find it interesting that she fails." Naruto considered this for several seconds. Acceptable. Teammates? Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, the bug user, and the Byakugan girl. Naruto's mouth twitched at one corner. The Aburame thinks in systems and avoids waste. He will be tolerable at best. The Hyuga is shy in a way that would normally annoy me, but the Byakugan offers useful supplementary vision for a body already operating at peak perfection. Approved. "I am so glad you approve," Hiruzen said dryly. "I am glad you value my satisfaction," Naruto replied, and the slight smile he wore as he left the office stayed with the Hokage for the rest of the day. The introduction in Training Ground 44 was brief. Anko Mitarashi was perched on top of one of the practice posts, a stick of dango halfway to her mouth when the three new genin arrived. Shino was first, as always, exactly on time. A precision of habit that had less to do with his discipline than his refusal to acknowledge the existence of Konoha standard tardiness. Hinata was second, 2 minutes after, eyes fixed somewhere between the ground and Naruto's collarbone. Naruto was third, but he had been there for an hour, sitting on a stump at the edge of the clearing, drinking tea from a small porcelain cup. Anko had pretended not to notice him. He had pretended not to notice her. Both of them had been aware of each other from the moment she landed on the post. Right, she bit the dango, talked around it. "You're my brats, I'm your sensei. Standard intro, name like dislike dream. Aburame go." Shino did not blink behind his glasses. "Aburame Shino, I value efficient tactics. I dislike waste. My goal is to lead my clan well." "Hyuga, go." "I am H. Hinata Hyuga. I like..." Her eyes flicked. They did not quite reach Naruto. "I like flowers. And training. I dislike being underestimated. My goal is to become strong enough to protect my sister." "Cute. Uzumaki, go." Naruto set his cup down on a flat stone. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. I like the few things in this world that are correctly proportioned. I dislike the nearly infinite number of things that are not. My goal is to find an opponent worth my full attention." There was a small silence. Anko Mitarashi smiled. It was a slow smile. It was the smile she had earned, fight by fight, at Orochimaru's side and after. "Aren't you a treat?" she said. "You are reasonably entertaining yourself," Naruto replied. "I suspect we will manage." He picked up his cup. He drank. The introduction was over. The first real mission came 6 months later. The first 5 months had been a parade of D-rank assignments, capturing cats, weeding gardens, painting fences. Naruto had refused to participate in any of them. He had appeared at the rendezvous point each time, observed the absurdity for between 2 and 4 minutes, declared the assignment beneath him, and left. His teammates had completed the missions without him. Anko had been the one to file the reports. The reports had been increasingly creative. The 6th month brought the request from the hidden mist. The Mizukage's village was burning. A civil war had been smoldering there for years, between the bloodline purists and the bloodline bearers, between the supporters of Yagura, a Mizukage who had been acting strangely for over a decade, and the rebels who believed the Kaji was being puppeted by someone outside the village entirely. The smoldering had become a fire. The fire had caught the rooftops. The rebels were calling for outside support. Konoha, neutral on paper, but with its own interests in keeping the mist from collapsing into a power vacuum that the cloud would happily fill, had agreed to send observers. Team Anko was assigned. Anko had not been told why. She suspected. "Recon and report," she said as they approached the bridge that led into the mist. The fog was so thick the bridge appeared and disappeared from view in slow waves. We do not engage. We do not intervene. We watch what is happening, we record what is happening, and we go home and tell the old man what is happening. That is the entire mission. Naruto, repeat the entire mission. Recon and report, Naruto said. Until I find something more interesting, then we will revisit. Anko closed her eyes for a long moment. Just try to refrain from flattening anything I have to write a report about. I will try, he said, and his tone was so accommodating that she felt worse rather than better. The Mist Village was worse than the briefing had described. Buildings were on fire. Streets were full of bodies. 2 factions of shinobi were locked in running battles on nearly every block, and the screams in the air had the particular pitch of people who were past hoping anyone could come and stop the screaming. Team Anko moved through the rooftops, observing. The center of the storm was the Mizukage's tower. Anko stopped them 3 roofs out. She pointed. That, she said, is exactly what we are not getting near. The figure on the tower was Yagura, the 4th Mizukage. He was no longer entirely Yagura. The 3 tails was rising out of him in slow or terrible pulses, a head here, a tail there, scaled flesh tearing through skin and rebuilding itself. The man's body fighting to hold its shape and losing the fight by inches. He was 100 feet of beast every other moment. Then a man again, then a beast. The pattern was unstable. Whoever or whatever had been holding Yagura on the leash for the past decade was losing that leash now. The transformation was running away from him. Fall back, Anko said. We report this. We get back up. We come back with people who can. She was talking to 2 Genin. Naruto Uzumaki was already in the air. Hinata's mouth opened. No sound came out. Shino's chakra signature did the closest thing an Obarame's chakra signature ever did to swearing. Naruto rose above the burning rooftops on a column of blue keys so smoothly that the heat of the fires below seemed to part around him. His hands were clasped behind his back. His coat, Anko had given up trying to track where he obtained his clothes, fluttered around his ankles. He hovered above the Mizukage's tower at a height of perhaps 200 feet and looked down at the half-formed tailed beast with the expression of a man inspecting a poor piece of pottery at a market. A tailed beast, he said. His voice carried. It carried in a way that should have been impossible. Every shinobi in the village heard him. Every civilian in their basement heard him. Every animal in the trees heard him. The key in his throat did the work for him. Let us see if your energy is worthy of my perfection. The 3 tails, Isabu, the 3 tails, ancient as the mountains and twice as patient, looked up. The man inside the beast looked up. Yagura's eyes had not been Yagura's eyes for 12 years. They were red-rimmed. They were full of someone else's intent. Right now they were also confused because the boy floating in the air did not register on any sense Yagura had ever trusted. He was a hole in the world, shaped like a child. The 3 tails opened its mouth. The tailed beast bomb formed in 3 seconds, a sphere of black-purple compressed power the size of a small house, packed so densely that the air around it bent. 2 seconds later, it was launched. It crossed the distance between the tower and Naruto in less than a heartbeat. Naruto extended his right hand. He did not flinch. He did not brace. The hand came up the way a man's hand comes up to wave at a friend across a street. The back of his palm met the tailed beast bomb. Then the tailed beast bomb was somewhere else. It went sideways, flung like a thrown apple, traveling at its original speed but at a new angle, and it cleared the village rooftops in a long, screaming arc and detonated half a mile out over the ocean. The crater it carved in the water was 300 meters across. The shockwave returned to the village 4 seconds later as a wall of warm wind that snuffed out half the fires and rattled every remaining window. Naruto's hand returned to its place behind his back. Was that supposed to hurt? He asked. He was speaking to the beast and the man and the puppeteer all at once, and all 3 of them heard it differently. Because if it was, I would suggest a different career. He moved. There was no jutsu. There was no transition. He was in one place, and then he was in another place. Directly in front of the half-formed tailed beast, his right hand already extended, fingers already finding the spot just under the 3 tails' jaw, where Yagura's actual neck still existed beneath the scales. His hand closed. The green light began. The three tails screamed. It was a sound that should not have been possible. The death cry of an entity that had existed since before the first Hokage drew breath, that had watched mountains rise out of the sea and seas come in to drown coasts. It thrashed. Its tails whipped through 3 buildings. Its claws raked out at Naruto's back. The invisible barrier around Naruto's body absorbed every claw, every tail, every ounce of force. The hand at the throat did the work. Witnesses in the village would later say it took 2 minutes. They were wrong. It took 11. 11 full minutes in which the three tails' chakra was drawn out of Yagura's body, the way smoke is drawn out of a chimney. Long, thick, endless ribbons of red-purple energy spiraling into Naruto's hand and disappearing into his arm, and from there into the body that was somehow capable of containing it. The beast shrank. It shrank from 100 feet to 90, to 75, to 50, to 30. The scales receded. The claws drew back into fingers. The face of the three tails became the face of a man, and the man was Yagura, small, slight, gray-haired before his time, hanging in the air by the throat of a child. The genjutsu strings holding Yagura's mind in place were the last to go. They fought hardest. Whoever Yagura's master was, and Naruto did not yet know the name Obito, but he could feel the foreign chakra threaded through every thought in the man's head. That master had laid the chains down with care over a decade of slow work. They came out anyway. They came out the way roots come out of dry earth. When Naruto opened his fingers, Yagura fell. He was alive. He was empty. He was free. The three tails was inside Naruto now. That was on its own a problem of interest. 2-tailed beasts in one host. The kind of thing that should have ruined the host. Naruto's body absorbed the chakra and rerouted it the way a city reroutes a river, and within the space of 3 breaths, the chakra was no longer tailed beast chakra. It was Naruto's chakra. The transformation was complete. The three tails, as a separate entity, no longer existed in any meaningful sense. He landed on the roof of the Mizukage's tower. Yagura landed beside him, on his back, blinking up at the sky. Anko, Shino, and Hinata arrived on the same roof a moment later. None of them had spoken on the way over. None of them spoke now. Anko's hand was on the hilt of a kunai she would never draw. Hinata's Byakugan was active. Her vision through it was, for the first time in her short career, completely useless, because what she was looking at had no chakra system she recognized. It had a sun behind its skin, and the sun was looking back at her. Naruto turned to Anko. "You were saying something about a retreat?" Anko closed her eyes for several seconds. When she opened them, she said, "Just write the report yourself this time." "I would prefer to leave that to you. The paperwork does not entertain me." "Of course it doesn't." The civil war ended that night. Without its Mizukage's chakra, Obito's grip on the village was severed. The rebels secured the tower. Mei Terumi, the woman who would become the 5th Mizukage, knelt at the side of the man who had unknowingly tormented her people for a decade, and she wept. Not for him, but for the dozen years she would never get back. When she rose, she was the leader of a village that had been remade in a single afternoon by a 13-year-old foreign genin floating in the air with his hands behind his back. She walked to the edge of the rooftop. She looked at Naruto Uzumaki. "Thank you," she said. Naruto looked at her with mild interest. "You are welcome," he said. "Try to keep this one alive." He stepped off the roof. He floated down to the street. He walked past the gathering crowd of Miss Shinobi who parted around him without anyone asking them to. He left the village by the bridge he had come in on, and his 3 teammates followed him at a distance that grew, one step at a time, until Anko caught up and matched his pace, because the only thing worse than walking near him was being seen to be afraid to. "Naruto," she said. "Anko, what are you?" He glanced at her. The sun had broken through the morning fog. The light caught his eyes. "A teacher would say," he answered, "that I am whatever the universe required. I am not particularly fond of teachers. I prefer to think of myself as the answer to a question this world did not yet know how to ask." She walked beside him in silence for a long time. "Cool," she said eventually. "Cool, cool, cool." He smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen on him. "I like you, Anko Mitarashi," he said. "You are afraid of me, and you continue to do your job anyway. There is a kind of dignity in that." She did not reply. She did not need to. They walked the long road back to Konoha, and the war they left behind them was over. The reaction in Konoha was a held breath. The reaction in the rest of the elemental nations was a scream. The Mist Village had not exactly hidden the events of that afternoon. Word traveled. By the time Team Anko crossed the border into Fire Country, the story had already arrived ahead of them. By the time they reached the gates of Konoha, every Kaji in the world had a report on his or her desk that began with the same sentence. A boy from Konoha pacified the Three Tails by hand. The Raikage broke a desk. The Tsuchikage demanded the boy be turned over for neutralization. The Kazekage, the false Kazekage, the one who was Orochimaru wearing a Kage's face, went very still in his stolen office. He had been planning his Konoha invasion for 6 months. He had built his strategy around the assumption that the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was a manageable variable. The reports out of the mist suggested the variable had legs of its own. He decided to accelerate his timeline. In Konoha itself, the council convened. They convened often. They convened more in the week after the mist incident than they had in the previous year. Danzo Shimura attended every session. He never spoke in any of them. He sat at the end of the table with his good eye half-lidded and his mouth in a flat line, and he listened to civilian elders talk about the dangers of an unsupervised Jinchuriki, and he listened to clan heads talk about the need for control measures, and he heard nothing on the agenda that he had not already concluded for himself. He was making plans. He had been making plans since the night 3 years ago when his elite platoon had not come home. He was a patient man. Naruto, for his part, had returned to his apartment. He had brewed a fresh pot of tea. He had read a book on the history of the Warring States period. He had ignored 4 messengers from the council and 3 from the Hokage. When the Hokage himself appeared at his door on the 4th day, Naruto had opened it, glanced at him, said, "Ah, come in. The water has just boiled," and gone back into his kitchen as if a head of state had shown up to a tea date. Hiruzen had drunk the tea. "The Chunin exams begin in 3 weeks," he said. "I am aware. Foreign genin are arriving from every village. The Sand has sent its full team. The Sound has registered participants. The Mist has invited itself. And I would very much like you to participate." Naruto considered this. "Why?" the Hokage exhaled. Biki said, "Every Kage in the world wants to know whether you exist. They will believe it when they see you. Until they see you, half of them will assume the mist is exaggerating to cover for the loss of their Mizukage. I would prefer the world believe the truth. The truth makes my job easier." Naruto sipped his tea. "And," the Hokage added, "because if you participate, perhaps you will refrain from destroying something you did not need to destroy on the day you decide you are bored." Naruto laughed. It was a low laugh. A short laugh. The kind of laugh that the room felt, even though it was a sound only briefly made. "Very well," he said. "I will participate. I make no promises about the outcome." "I expected as much." "Hokage-sama." "Yes? Tell Danzo that if he interferes in any way, I will know, and the response will be appropriate to the offense. I would hate for an old man to die over an old habit." The Hokage looked the boy across the table. The boy was 13. The boy was holding a teacup. The boy was absolutely going to do exactly what he had said, and there would be no warning before he did it. "I will tell him," Hiruzen said. "Thank you," said Naruto, and refilled his cup. The first stage of the Chunin exams was a written test. It was administered by Ibiki Morino, a man whose face was a map of every interrogation he had ever conducted. He had a particular speech he liked to give, about pressure, about cracking, about the fact that the test was not a test, but a demonstration of resolve. He had given it many times. It worked, often. He had to abandon it halfway through this year. He abandoned it because the boy in the 3rd row, the Uzumaki, had finished his test in 9 minutes, set his pencil down, folded his hands, and was now watching Ibiki with the same patient expression a man might wear while waiting for a slow elevator. The boy was correct on every answer. Ibiki had checked. The boy had also written in the margin of his test the words, "I have answered honestly because dishonesty would imply you were worth the deception." Ibiki had read those words twice. Then he had crumpled the test slightly in his fist, smoothed it out, and continued giving his speech to the rest of the room. He passed everyone. He had no choice. The boy was the variable. The boy passed, so the room passed. Abiki had not been told why the variable had to pass. He suspected it was because the variable would pass regardless of what was decided in this room. The second stage was the Forest of Death. Anko gave the briefing. She gave it in her usual style, a kunai thrown to graze a participant's cheek, a wide grin, a description of the forest that emphasized the parts likely to kill them. The participants signed the consent forms. Some of them signed with shaking hands. The Suna team signed with steady ones. The sound team signed with a kind of giggling glee that made Anko's eye twitch. Naruto signed his without reading it. The teams entered the forest. For 4 minutes, the second stage of the Chunin exams proceeded according to plan. In the 5th minute, it stopped. Naruto Uzumaki rose above the canopy. He had been bored from the moment they entered. The other teams scattering through the trees, chasing scrolls, ambushing each other in the underbrush. It was childish. It was beneath him. He had walked 20 steps into the forest with Shino and Hinata behind him, and on the 21st step, he had simply stopped, looked up at the trees, and decided to fix things. He floated up. He cleared the canopy. He extended both arms. His telekinesis spread. The Forest of Death, the entirety of Training Ground 44, 10 square kilometers of ancient, hostile woodland, felt his attention land on it the way a small village feels the attention of an approaching storm. The earth in the center of the forest began to move. Trees in a perfect circle 200 meters across lifted themselves out of the ground roots and floated to the perimeter of the circle, where they set themselves down again, perfectly upright, perfectly aligned. The earth in the cleared circle smoothed. Stone rose from below, granite weathered, pulled up out of the bedrock and arranged itself into walls. Walls became tiers. Tiers became seats. The seats curved around a central platform of polished stone, and the platform rose at the center, 3 meters high, with steps cut on every side. It took 20 seconds. When he was done, an arena stood in the middle of the Forest of Death, perfectly proportioned, perfectly built, the kind of structure that should have taken 100 stonemasons 2 years to construct. He raised his voice. He projected it through ki, the way he had over the mist. Every shinobi in the forest heard him as if he were standing beside them. The proctors at the edges heard him. The Jonin observers in the watchtowers heard him. The Hokage in his office, 3 kilometers away, heard him. Attention, pathetic shinobi of the Chunin exams. The second stage is now over. What you are doing right now is beneath all of us, and I include yourselves in that judgment, though I suspect most of you cannot tell. I am instituting a replacement event. I call it the Cell Games. The rules are simple. Step into the arena I have provided. Fight me, or fight each other for my entertainment, as you prefer. If you bore me, I will vaporize this forest and everything currently crawling through it. You have 5 minutes. He floated down to the platform. He sat on the top step. He folded his hands in his lap. The forest went silent. For a count of about 10 seconds, nothing moved. Every team in the forest weighed the threat. Every team in the forest individually came to the conclusion that the threat was not a threat at all. It was a description. Then the forest moved. Every team in the second stage of the Chunin exams dropped their scrolls and ran for the arena. The watchtowers panicked. There were 3 watchtowers around the Forest of Death, and at the moment, Naruto rose above the canopy. All 3 were occupied by senior Jonin observers, Asuma Sarutobi in the north, Kurenai Yuhi in the south, and Anko Mitarashi in the east, because the Hokage had reasoned that if anyone could intervene in time, it would be the woman who had known Naruto longest. Of the 3 of them, only Anko had been laughing. She was still laughing when Asuma's transmission came through her radio. "What is he doing? He's hosting a tournament," she said. "He's what?" "He built an arena. He's invited the entire exam to fight him, or each other, whichever he finds entertaining." There was a pause. "He built an arena." Out of the floor. "He pulled the trees up by the roots." "Yes, Asuma. He built an arena." Another pause. "Should we intervene?" Anko looked through her binoculars at the boy on the platform. He was sitting with his hands folded, watching the forest move toward him. He looked like a king receiving petitioners. He looked like a god receiving offerings. He looked like a 13-year-old who had remade the second stage of the Chunin exams in his own image and was waiting for the world to catch up. Asuma, she said. If you go down there to intervene, he will absorb you. Right. Tell the Hokage. Let him decide. Right. The Hokage decided to do nothing. It was a hard decision. He waited for 90 seconds. He listened to his pipe. He looked at the map on his wall. He thought about every Kage who had a representative in the stands of the watchtowers right now, watching the live transmission of the Chunin exam stage, watching a 13-year-old Genin from his village rewrite the rules in real time. He thought about his options. He chose the least bad one. Let him host his tournament, he said. If he wanted to destroy us, he would have done it 3 years ago. We let this play out. We watch. We learn what he is willing to do and what he is not willing to do. We owe him that much, given that he has graciously refrained from killing all of us. The Jonin commander he was speaking to looked at him for a long moment. You are afraid of him, Hokage-sama. I am the only person in this room old enough to be honest about it, Hiruzen said. Yes, I am afraid of him. So is every other Kage who has heard his name. The difference between them and me is that I live in the same village as him, and I would prefer not to give him reasons to find the village uninteresting. The Jonin commander stayed silent. Send word to the watchtowers, Hiruzen said. The cell games will be observed. They will be recorded. Foreign attendees may continue to watch, and they may report whatever they wish to their villages. It is no longer a secret who Naruto Uzumaki is. And the Genin in the forest? They will fight or they will run. If they fight, we will record their performance for Chunin promotion. If they run, we will not blame them. He turned back to his window. And we will pray, he said, that Naruto Uzumaki finds this afternoon entertaining. The cell games lasted 2 hours. In those 2 hours, Naruto Uzumaki sat on his stone platform and watched Genin try to entertain him. Most of them failed. The first team to enter the arena was a Konoha team, Kiba Inuzuka, Akamaru, and 2 teammates whose names Naruto did not bother to retain. Kiba had been watching from the trees. Kiba had decided, with the kind of confidence that had carried him through 3 years of academy bravado, that whatever the Uzumaki kid was up to, it was a bluff that needed calling. He charged the platform. His teammates flanked. Naruto raised one hand. The 3 of them stopped in midair, 6 feet from the platform, suspended by telekinesis. Akamaru continued to bark. Kiba continued to yell. The teammates went silent very fast. Naruto looked at them with the expression of a man who has been served the wrong drink at a restaurant and is trying to decide whether to mention it. You are the first, he said. I will allow you to leave with your bones intact. Do not return to this arena. The next team I encounter will receive less generosity. He flicked his fingers. The 3 of them flew over the wall of the arena and into the cleared trees beyond it. They landed in soft underbrush. They got up. They ran. Akamaru ran fastest. The second team entered with more sense. They were Iwa Genin, 3 of them, a balanced trio used to working together. They did not charge the platform. They split the arena, took up positions at 3 points of a triangle, and proceeded to attack each other for Naruto's entertainment. It was a real fight. The 3 of them were Chunin grade. Their jutsu were fast, layered, well coordinated. They put on a show, earth walls, lightning chains, a final taijutsu exchange that ended with one of them on his back, breathing hard, staring up at the sky. Naruto applauded politely. 3 soft claps. Adequate, he said. All 3 of you may proceed to the next stage. You have my approval. The 3 of them stared up at him. They understood dimly that they had just been promoted to Chunin by a 13-year-old Genin in violation of every protocol the exams had ever followed. They understood, more dimly, that the promotion would stand because nothing stood against it. They left the arena slowly, supporting each other, and Naruto watched them go with the small smile of a teacher who has, for once, not been disappointed. 3 more teams came, 2 more passed. 1 was sent away with a warning. The 4th team to enter was the sound team. 3 Genin in matching grays. They stepped onto the platform in formation. The middle one, silver-haired, glasses, a smile that did not match anything else about him, bowed to Naruto with overdone graciousness. Naruto-sama, he said, we have been instructed to extend Lord Orochimaru's compliments. He is most eager to make your acquaintance personally. Naruto looked at him for a long time. Tell Orochimaru, he said at last, that he is welcome to make my acquaintance whenever he believes himself ready. I will be on this platform for the duration of the afternoon. He may step into my ring like everyone else. I do not entertain requests for private audiences." The silver-haired genin's smile widened. He thought you might say that. The sound team did not attack. They turned and left the arena. Naruto watched them go with mild interest. The trap was clearly being set. He had no objection. Traps were occasionally entertaining, and at least it would be a change of pace from the genin parade. The fifth team to enter was the Sand Team. Naruto's eyes opened slightly when he sensed them at the gates of the arena. The first one through was the puppet user, Kankuro, painted face, the bundle on his back. The second was the sister, Temari, fan in hand, eyes hard. The third walked between them. He was small. He was younger than the others. He had a gourd on his back the size of his torso, and his arms were folded across his chest, and his eyes were the color of seafoam under a layer of dust, and they did not blink when they fixed on Naruto, Gaara of the Sand, the Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Shukaku, the boy whose mother had named him loving only himself, because she had known, in her dying moments, that no one else would. He stepped into the arena. He walked to the base of the platform. He looked up. The other two stayed at the edge. The two of them stared at each other for a long time. "You?" Gaara said eventually. His voice was a sand scrape. "Mother says you are like me." "Your mother," Naruto replied, "is incorrect. You are a child carrying a passenger. I have no passengers. I am singular. The thing inside you and the thing inside me are categorically different. Mother says she wants your blood. Tell your mother that she may want it. She will not have it." Gaara's hand twitched. "I exist to kill," he said. "I confirm I am alive by ending the lives of others." "That is a charming explanation," Naruto said. "I look forward to discussing it with you in greater depth at a later date. Today is not that date. You and I are going to have a longer conversation in the very near future, Gaara of the Sand. I encourage you to survive whatever your village's actual plan is, so that we may have it." Gaara stared at him. For the first time in his short, miserable life, the Shukaku in his head was silent. The boy turned. He walked out of the arena. His siblings followed him. Temari, on the way out, looked back at Naruto, and the expression on her face was not fear. It was something else. It was the slow understanding of someone who has just realized that the man she has spent her childhood being terrified of is not, in the grand order of things, the most terrifying man in the building. Naruto watched them go. He folded his hands again. "Next," he said. The sixth team to enter was the team Naruto had been waiting for. Sasuke Uchiha walked into the arena alone. His Team 7 had been disbanded, of course. There had never been a Team 7 without Naruto, and Kakashi had refused to take a two-person team. Sasuke had been folded into a backup squad with two other rookie genin he despised. They had passed the first two stages of the exam by clinging to him like barnacles. They were nowhere near him now. They were standing at the edge of the arena, white-faced, because Sasuke had told them to stay back, and Sasuke had been, for the past month, in a state of mind that even his backup teammates had recognized as a fuse close to its end. He walked to the platform. He looked up. Naruto. "Uchiha-san, fight me." Naruto considered him. The boy was thinner than he had been at the academy. He had been training hard. The Sharingan was awake. Both eyes, 2 tomoe each, recently bloomed. There was something in his shoulders that had not been there a year ago. The hatred that lived in him had grown in. It had taken root. It was a houseplant now. It would be a tree soon. "No," Naruto said. The single syllable hit the arena harder than any jutsu would have. "What?" "You are not yet worth my time, Uchiha-san. You are getting closer. I am willing to acknowledge growth where I see it. But you remain significantly beneath the threshold of effort I am willing to expend on a body. Come back to me when you have something worth showing me. I will be available. I am, in fact, almost always available." Sasuke's hand went to his sword. "Try it," Naruto said, and his tone was so even that Sasuke's hand froze. "I will give you one piece of advice, free of charge. If you draw that blade, I will take your eyes. They are wasted on you. They were the only impressive thing your clan ever produced, and the man who killed your clan understood their value better than you ever will. Walk away, train harder, become something I would consider engaging with. Until then, Do not waste my afternoon. Sasuke's hand stayed on the hilt for a very long second. Then it dropped. He turned. He walked out of the arena. He did not look back. He left the forest of death by the south gate alone, and he disappeared into the streets of Konoha for 3 days, and when he came back, he was someone different. Whatever had been a fuse was now a powder train. Whatever had been a houseplant was now a tree. The next time anyone in Konoha saw Sasuke Uchiha, his eyes were two tome and a third was beginning to bloom, and he was training under Kakashi like a man trying to build a ladder to the sky. Naruto, on the platform, watched him go. He understood, in the way a chess player understands the position 5 moves before it arrives, that Sasuke would defect. He understood that Orochimaru would come for him. He understood that the boy was being marked already by the people who fed on hatred. None of this concerned him. It would resolve when it resolved. Until then, the afternoon had other entertainments, and one of them was about to walk through the gate. The 7th team to enter the arena was a single man. He was tall. He was thin. His skin was the color of ivory left too long in the sun. His eyes were yellow. His tongue, when it darted out to touch his upper lip, was longer than it had any right to be. He was wearing a sound Jonin's clothes that did not fit him because they had been the clothes of the Jonin he had killed to get into the exam. Orochimaru of the Sannin walked into the arena. The genin in the stands went very still. Anko, in her watchtower, made a sound that was halfway between a curse and a prayer. The Hokage, in his office, set down the report he had been pretending to read. Naruto rose from the platform. He stepped down the stairs. He met Orochimaru in the center of the arena. For a long moment, the two of them looked at each other. Then Orochimaru smiled. "Naruto-kun," he said, and his voice was honey poured over old glass. "What a fascinating specimen you are. I have read every report the mist failed to suppress. I have studied every account of your existence with the greatest attention. I would very much like to study you up close. You and I think, have so very much to teach each other." Naruto's expression did not change. "You are mistaken about one of those things," he said. "I have nothing to teach you. There is a difference between sharing knowledge and feeding swine, and I have always made a point of feeding only the animals I intend to keep. As for studying me, you may attempt it, in the same way a moth may attempt to study a candle. The outcome is the same either way." Orochimaru's smile widened. "You shed your skin to cheat death like a common reptile," Naruto continued. "I am the perfect organism. I cannot die. There is a difference between a trick and a truth, Orochimaru. You have spent your entire life mistaking one for the other. It is the central tragedy of your career, and I doubt you will live long enough to correct it." The Sannin's smile fell. He moved. The Kusanagi, the legendary blade that lived inside him, that he had stolen from a mountain shrine 60 years ago, that he carried in his throat the way a normal man carried his voice, extended from his open mouth at a speed the eye could not follow. The blade was 3 feet long when it left his lips, then 6, then 9, then 12. It cut the air on its way to Naruto's chest with a sound like silk being pulled along a wire, and it struck. Naruto did not move out of the way. His right arm caught the blade, not blocked, caught. The Kusanagi punched through the meat of his forearm, came out the other side, and continued forward another foot before Orochimaru's strike reached its peak. The blade quivered in the boy's flesh. Then Naruto twisted his arm, once, slightly, and the arm came away from his shoulder. It hit the stone floor with a dull, heavy sound. The blade was still embedded in it. Orochimaru's pupils dilated. The genin in the stands made a collective sound, half gasp, half choke. One of them threw up over the railing. Naruto looked at his shoulder. The stump was clean. It was already dry. The flesh was knitting closed even as he watched it, sealing itself off the way a healer might seal a vessel. "Did you really think that would work?" he said. His voice had not changed pitch. "You are missing the point entirely. You believe my body to be a problem solvable by your tools. My body is the problem your tools were invented to fail to solve." The flesh moved. The genin in the stands watched a 13-year-old boy regrow an arm in the time it took Orochimaru of the Sannin to reset his stance. Bone first, a white spike of regenerating ulna, growing out of the shoulder socket like a fast time lapse of a tree. Then muscle, weaving itself across the bone in red ropes. Then tendons threading through the muscle. Then a layer of skin drawing across the muscle the way a sheet draws across a bed. 12 seconds, start to finish. The new arm flexed, the fingers curled, the fist closed, the fist opened. Naruto looked at his hand. He nodded once, satisfied. Now then, where were we? He moved. The first strike was a punch to Orochimaru's ribs. It connected. The Sannin had attempted to dodge. His body had been moving for nearly a full second before Naruto's fist arrived, but his body had not been moving fast enough. The fist landed with a sound like a heavy book being dropped onto a wooden floor. 3 of Orochimaru's ribs broke at once. He skipped sideways across the platform, his feet leaving the stone, his body folding into the air like a misfired flag. Naruto was on him before he landed. The second strike was a kick to the collarbone. The collarbone broke. Orochimaru hit the wall of the arena and slid down, leaving a red smear behind him. The third strike was a knee to the jaw, delivered as Naruto closed the distance between them in a single step. Orochimaru's head snapped back. The Sannin was, by this point, no longer fully present. His body was operating on the autopilot of a 6-decade career in violence. His mind was somewhere behind his eyes, watching, refusing to believe, and he could not bring himself back to the front fast enough to prevent any of what was happening. He threw himself into a substitution. The substitution did not take. Naruto's hand had already closed around his wrist before the seal could finish forming. "You are not going anywhere," Naruto said. "I'm not finished." He lifted Orochimaru off the floor by the wrist and threw him across the arena. The Sannin hit the opposite wall. He fell. He rolled. He came up coughing blood and fire, a literal fire, a Katon technique he had been preparing in his lungs as a desperate measure, a gout of flame the size of a house that filled the arena from the wall to the platform. Naruto walked through it. He came out the other side with no more soot on him than a man who had walked through an early morning fog. His coat was untouched. His hair was unmoved. He was holding, in his open right palm, a sphere of compressed blue ki the size of an apple. It hummed. The air around it bent. The light it gave off was not blue light. It was light that had not yet decided what color it would be when it left the sphere. Orochimaru saw it. The Sannin's mouth opened to say something. He never said it. Naruto pressed the sphere against the man's chest. He did not throw it. He did not fire it. He pressed it against him the way a man might press a stamp against an envelope. The sphere detonated. Orochimaru's lower body ceased to exist. The Sannin did not die. He was, by some grace of the cursed seals he had spent his life developing, still alive. From the sternum up, he was still Orochimaru, eyes wide, mouth open. The realization of every error of his life arriving on his face all at once. Below the sternum, he was empty air and the smell of burned hair. He hit the floor on what remained of his torso. He looked up at Naruto. He tried to speak. What he managed was a wet, shaking laugh. You are, what are? I am the answer, Naruto said. I am the answer to the question your entire life has been asking. You may take the answer with you wherever it is you intend to crawl. I expect you will not be back. Orochimaru's body convulsed. Then it began to move. From the stump of his torso, a new body was emerging. Pale, white, snake skin, pulled out of his own remaining flesh like a hand pulling a glove out of another glove. The Sannin's last technique, the one he had spent a lifetime preparing for occasions exactly like this one. He shed his entire ruined self, and the self that came out of it was whole, naked, and weeping. He ran. He slithered. He did not look back. He cleared the arena wall in a single bound and disappeared into the trees of the forest of death. Trailing destruction and humiliation in equal measure, Naruto watched him go. How boring, he said. For all the rumors, I expected at least 3 rounds. He turned to face the watching stands. The stands were full of genin. Every team that had been in the forest had stopped fighting an hour ago and migrated to the arena to watch. They were full of jonin. The watchtower observers had moved to the rim of the arena and were no longer pretending to maintain their positions. They were full of Keiji representatives, the sand, the mist, the cloud, the Iwa, all of them watching, all of them taking notes, all of them understanding that the boy on the platform had just dismantled one of the 3 Sannin in under 2 minutes and was now bored about it. Next, he said. There was no next. The Cell Games ended without further entries. Naruto Uzumaki sat back down on his platform. He poured himself a cup of tea from a pot that had not been there 3 minutes ago. He drank it slowly. The afternoon sun moved toward evening. Eventually, when the silence had lasted long enough, he stood up, brushed off his coat, and walked out of the arena. The crowd parted for him as if it had been rehearsed. The Hokage promoted 17 genin to chunin that night. Naruto Uzumaki was among them. The promotion certificate sat on his kitchen counter for a week before he got around to filing it in a drawer. He did not attend the ceremony. The invasion came 11 days later. Orochimaru, broken, reborn, missing an apprentice he had been counting on, decided to commit anyway. There was a logic to it. His plan had been built. His allies had been paid. His sound shinobi were already inside the village walls. He had, more importantly, no future left in which Konoha existed, and he existed at the same time, because the boy in Konoha would eventually finish what he had started in the Forest of Death, and Orochimaru wanted, very much, to take Konoha with him on the way out. He used Gaara as the trigger. He had paid the sand to cooperate. The Kazekage was already dead. Orochimaru had been wearing his face for months, and the one-tailed Shukaku, with the right pressure applied at the right moment, it would manifest in the middle of the village and break it open like a melon. The pressure was applied during the third stage of the Chunin exams. The third stage was held in the great arena in the heart of Konoha. It was supposed to be a tournament. 16 finalists, the Hokage in attendance, the Kage of every major village in the world watching in person or through proxies. It was the centerpiece of the exams. It was, by Orochimaru's plan, supposed to be the centerpiece of Konoha's funeral. Naruto did not enter the third stage. He had not bothered to register. The Chunin promotion he had received in the forest had been a surprise to him, and he had filed it away as a thing that had happened to him without his consent, the same way other unimportant things sometimes happen to him. He was, however, in the village. He was sitting on top of the Hokage monument. He had brought a book and a pot of tea. He had eaten 3 rice balls. He had been there since dawn. The weather was good. The wind was steady. He could see the entire village laid out below him like a map. He could see the Sand Sound shinobi infiltrating the perimeter. He had been able to see them since they crossed the gate. He had decided to do nothing about it. The shinobi system, he had concluded long ago, only learned through pain. The village would benefit from a small lesson. He would intervene when intervention became interesting. The match between Sasuke Uchiha and Gaara of the Sand began on schedule. Sasuke arrived late in a flourish on the heels of Kakashi who had spent the past month training him into the ground. He was wearing black. He had grown his hair out. The Sharingan in his eyes had the third Tomoe in both eyes now. He moved like someone had rebuilt him. He fought like someone with something to prove, because he did. The match was supposed to be the climax of the tournament. It got 6 exchanges in before the Genjutsu hit the stadium. Orochimaru, in his Kazekage robes, in the box reserved for foreign Kage, dropped the Genjutsu over the stands. Civilians fell asleep where they sat. Lower-ranked shinobi went down with them. The Hokage beside him felt the technique and was on his feet before it landed. The two of them locked eyes. The barrier went up. 4 sound shinobi, the elites Orochimaru had brought with him, formed the corners of a ceiling technique that surrounded the rooftop they had escaped to. The barrier was purple. It was lethal to touch. It was meant to keep the Hokage in and everyone else out for as long as it took Orochimaru to finish him. The Hokage understood, the moment the seals locked, that this was an assassination, and he understood that the assassination was likely to succeed because Orochimaru had spent the past year preparing and Hiruzen had spent the past year worrying about an entirely different boy. The fight began. Below them, the stadium was chaos. Sand and sound shinobi attacked from every direction. Konoha Jonin engaged. Genjutsu spread. Civilians screamed and ran. In the arena floor, Sasuke broke off from his match against Gaara because Gaara had broken first. The Sand Jinchuriki had clutched his head, screamed, and started transforming. The transformation was fast, faster than any restraint Gaara had over it. The Shukaku had been promised a feast, and the Shukaku was no longer waiting. Naruto on the Hokage monument set his cup down, A sand demon was rising in the heart of his village. A purple barrier was on the roof of the arena, sealing in the only man in Konoha who had treated him like a person. Sand and sound shinobi were in the streets. The civilian losses had begun. The shockwaves from the fights below were starting to make his teacup vibrate. "How loud?" he said. He stood up. He floated. The Shukaku was 100 feet of laughing, screaming sand demon by the time Naruto arrived above it. It had broken halfway out of the arena. It had crushed 2 sections of the stadium and 3 city blocks beyond it. Gaara was at its forehead, folded into the sand, his mind buried under the weight of his passenger, his small body dwarfed by the thing he was riding. The Shukaku's mouth was open. The Shukaku was forming a wind bullet the size of a small house. It fired. Naruto held up one hand. The wind bullet hit his open palm and stopped. It pressed against him for a full second. Then it began to compress. Naruto closed his hand. The bullet shrank. The bullet shrank more. The bullet shrank into a marble of compressed air the size of a thumbnail, and Naruto flicked it back the way it had come. The marble hit Shukaku's right arm at the shoulder. The arm exploded. Sand sprayed in every direction. The Shukaku screamed. The scream was enormous. "If you want to survive this conversation," Naruto said, "you must show me your true power, because whatever that was, it was beneath acknowledgement." He raised both hands. The Kamehameha he formed between his palms was the size of a barrel. The light from it lit the entire village in pale blue. The sound of it was a hum that vibrated every rooftop, every window, every drawn breath in the streets below. The chakra around it was so dense that the air bent visibly, refracting the light of the late afternoon sun into a halo of broken color. He did not fire it as a wave. He fired it as a beam, tight, focused, laser thin. It crossed the distance to Shukaku in the time it took to blink. It punched through Shukaku's torso from front to back. The hole it left behind was perfectly circular and large enough for a man to stand in. Sand poured out of the hole. Shukaku howled. The howl went on for almost 10 seconds before it began to dim. Naruto closed the distance. He landed on Shukaku's forehead. He found Gaara. He reached down through the sand and his hand closed around the boy's throat. The absorption began. It was different from the absorption of the Three Tails. The Three Tails had been fully external, a beast on its own with a host below it. The Shukaku was different. The Shukaku was inside Gaara, fused into him in a way Yagura had never been fused with Isobu. The seal Gaara wore was a partial seal, a butcher's job, done by a sand priest who had known what he was doing was wrong and had done it anyway. To take the Shukaku, Naruto had to take only the Shukaku and leave Gaara breathing. He did. It was difficult work. It took 14 minutes. He pulled the Shukaku's chakra out of Gaara's chakra system, one ribbon at a time, separating 2 things that had been knotted together for 13 years. The sand demon shrank around them. The 100 feet of sand collapsed back into a smaller and smaller shape, and the smaller shape collapsed back into the boy at its center, until what remained was Gaara, small, slight, sand-streaked, hanging in the air by the throat of a child. He was weeping, without sound, without sobs, only tears running down a face that had stopped knowing how to make tears years ago. "Mother," he whispered. "Mother, where are you? Mother." "Your mother was not in your head," Naruto said. "Your mother loved you. The thing that has been pretending to be her was a piece of its own loneliness, and I have removed it. The voice will go silent now. You will, in time, miss it. I would advise you to allow yourself to miss it. The grief of losing a parasite is a real grief, and it should be respected." He set Gaara down on the sand. The boy's siblings, Tamari and Kankuro, who had been watching from the edge of the arena, frozen, unable to intervene, ran to him. They caught him. They held him. He did not push them away. He had never let them touch him before in his life. Naruto turned away. The Shukaku was inside him now. It had joined the Three Tails. He did not feel any different. The chakra was, by the time it traveled 3 inches into him, no longer Shukaku's chakra. It was his. Above the stadium, the purple barrier was still up. The Hokage was still inside. The Hokage was, by Naruto's senses, dying. Slowly, by inches, locked in a battle with a man who had brought back 2 former Hokage as living weapons and was using them against the man who had taught him to read. Naruto rose. The 4 sound shinobi at the corners of the barrier saw him coming. They had been told that the barrier was impenetrable, that if anyone tried to break it, the seal would protect them by killing the intruder. They had been told that nothing could enter from outside. Naruto did not enter from outside. He raised one finger. 4 thin purple beams of light traveled from the tip of his finger through the 4 shinobi's heads. They fell where they stood. The barrier collapsed. He floated down to the rooftop. He landed beside Hiruzen Sarutobi. The Hokage was on his knees. The Hokage's reanimated former teachers, the first and second, were turning toward the new arrival with the slow, blank patience of corpses. Orochimaru, in his Kazekage robes, was in front of them. One hand still raised in the seal that fed them his chakra. He saw Naruto. His face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: surprise, recalculation, despair. "Naruto-kun," he said. "How?" Naruto's hand was already at his throat. This time, the absorption was savage. Naruto did not pace himself. He did not drag it out. He pulled Orochimaru's chakra from him in one continuous draw, draining the man like a drink. The 2 reanimated Hokage went still. Their fuel was the man being drained. And then, as Orochimaru's chakra failed, the Edo Tensei seals on the corpses lost their bind. The first Hokage's body crumbled into ash. The second Hokage's body followed. Orochimaru himself did not die. Naruto did not let him die. He took everything he could without taking the life. He left a husk of a man. Orochimaru's chakra reserves at 0, his cursed seals on the verge of failure, his snake summons severed from him for the foreseeable future. He let go. The Sannin fell to the rooftop. He did not move. He was breathing. His eyes were open. They were looking at nothing. "This is not the death you deserve," Naruto told him. "I would prefer to give you a proper one. However, my Hokage requires immediate care, and your continued existence is the lesser of 2 priorities. Live with this. Live, and remember, every day you continue to draw breath, that I chose to leave you alive because killing you was not worth my full attention." He turned to Hiruzen. The Hokage was on his back now. The Reaper death seal he had been preparing, the technique that would have killed him to seal Orochimaru's soul, had been aborted halfway through. He was bleeding from his mouth. His chest was rising in shallow flutters. Naruto knelt beside him. He placed his palm on the old man's chest. Green light pulsed, but in reverse. A slow rolling tide of chakra moving from Naruto into Hiruzen, from the perfect organism into the failing one, restoring what could be restored, repairing what could be repaired. It was not a healing technique Naruto had learned. It was a healing technique Naruto had developed in a single afternoon when he had decided he wanted one. The Hokage's color returned. His breathing steadied. His eyes opened. "Naruto, old man, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For ever thinking," Hiruzen said weakly, "that I needed to fear you." Naruto smiled. It was the second real smile of his life as Naruto Uzumaki. "You did need to fear me," he said. "You simply needed to be correct about which of us your fear was protecting." He helped the Hokage to his feet. The invasion ended that day. The sand, leaderless, their Kazekage having been dead for months, surrendered to Konoha within hours. The sound, leaderless, scattered into the surrounding forests. The civilian casualties were severe but smaller than they would have been. 3 city blocks had been crushed. The arena was half destroyed. The Hokage was alive. The boy on the rooftop, with his hand still on the old man's shoulder, watched the village below begin the slow business of putting itself back together. "Naruto," Hiruzen said. "Yes, what do you want?" The boy looked at him. "I have what I want," he said. "The afternoon was entertaining. I do not require additional compensation." "Of course." Naruto helped the old man down off the roof. They walked through the streets of Konoha together, and the people who saw them, the survivors, the wounded, the grieving, did not know which of them to bow to. They bowed to both. Many of them bowed only to the boy. It was the first time that had happened. It would not be the last. In the weeks after the failed invasion, 3 things happened. The first was that Konoha's relationship with its Jinchuriki shifted. There had been, since the day Naruto was born, a wall between the village and the boy. A wall built of fear of the 9 tails, of the memory of the night the demon had killed the 4th and his wife. The wall had survived everything until the afternoon. A tailed beast manifested in the heart of the village, and the boy on the Hokage monument flew down and pulled it out of its host like a splinter. The wall did not fall. It changed. It became a different kind of wall, one made of awe, of religion, of the very particular kind of worship that develops around something that has chosen, repeatedly, not to destroy you. The same villagers who had crossed the street to avoid Naruto for 13 years now stepped aside when he approached, but they bowed as they did it. They bowed low. Some of them brought offerings to his apartment door, flowers, fruit, sake bottles, handwritten notes, and they left them on the welcome mat without ringing the bell. Naruto found the offerings interesting. He did not return them. He did not, however, accept them. He let them accumulate on his stoop until the building manager came by to clear them, after which the cycle began again. He drank none of the sake. He read all of the notes. He kept the ones that were unusually well written. The second was that Gaara of the Sand returned to his village a different person. The Shukaku was gone. The voice was gone. The mother who had lived in his head for 13 years was gone. He spent the first month of his post-Shukaku life sleeping. He had not slept in any real way since he was 4 years old. The relief of true sleep was at first indistinguishable from grief, and his siblings sat by his bed for that month and watched him sleep and did not know what to do with the boy who emerged. When he emerged, he was still Gaara. He was harder than before, in some ways. He was softer in others. He was, his sister said, finally becoming someone she could imagine being a brother. He sent Naruto a letter 3 months after the invasion. The letter was short. It said, "I am alive. You said we would have a longer conversation. I am ready when you are." Naruto wrote back. Naruto's letter said, "I was not joking when I said your conversation would come. It will. Continue to live. I will summon you when the time is correct." The two of them began to write to each other irregularly over the next year. Naruto's letters were short and direct. Gaara's letters were also short and direct. The two of them, in their own way, became the closest thing either of them had ever had to a friend, although neither of them used the word, because neither of them would have allowed themselves to. The third was that Sasuke Uchiha defected. He defected 11 months after the invasion. He had been training all that time with Kakashi, with anyone else in the village who would teach him. He had grown his Sharingan to its full 3 tomoe. He had unlocked a Chidori variant of his own design. He had become, by every measure available to a 13-year-old in Konoha, one of the strongest genin the village had produced in a generation. It was not enough. It would never be enough. He had understood that, after the Cell Games, after watching Naruto Uzumaki dismantle a Seinen in 2 minutes and reject him from the same arena with 3 sentences, the gap between him and Naruto had never been a gap that hard work could close. It had been a gap of category. Naruto was something else. Sasuke was a boy. The training, the Sharingan, the techniques, they would never make him into the other thing. Orochimaru, broken though he was, sent the offer anyway. He sent it through the Sound Four, who were healing in caves to the east. He sent it as a written message. He sent it because he had nothing else to send. The offer said, power. The kind of power you cannot get in Konoha. The kind of power the boy you hate cannot prevent. Come, bring nothing. We will give you what your village has refused to give you. Sasuke read the message in his apartment. He read it 3 times. Then he packed a bag and left the village at midnight. The Valley of the End. It was no coincidence. Sasuke had picked it. He had wanted, in some part of himself, to be intercepted. He had wanted Naruto, of all people, to come for him. Because no one else in the village mattered. Because no one else's interception would mean anything. He had picked the valley because the valley was the place where Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju had ended their friendship. And Sasuke was, even in his ruin, a romantic about the right kinds of failure. He stood on the head of Madara Uchiha. The waterfall behind him was 100 meters tall. The river below was deep and fast. The afternoon light was the color of old bronze. The sky was overcast. The wind moved through the gorge in slow, heavy pulses. He waited. He had been there for an hour when Naruto arrived. There had been no pursuit. The Konoha pursuit team, Shikamaru, Choneji, the others, had been dispatched and was hours behind. Naruto had not been on that team. Naruto had not been told about the defection. Naruto had been informed by a passing crow that landed on his apartment windowsill at 3 in the morning that an inflated ego was about to become someone else's problem. He had decided to address the problem. He arrived at the Valley of the End by air. He came down through the clouds on a column of blue ki, and he landed on the surface of the river at the base of the gorge. He stood on the water as if standing on a polished floor. He looked up at Sasuke on Madara's head. He folded his hands in front of him. "Uchiha-san," he said. "You came. I was informed." Sasuke laughed. It was a thin laugh. It had the wrong pitch. "You don't even care, do you? You aren't here to bring me back. You aren't here to talk me out of it. You're here because I'm going to be someone's problem, and you'd rather it be yours than someone else's." "Correct." "Well," Sasuke spread his hands. "At least we understand each other." He activated the curse seal, the mark on his neck, Orochimaru's gift given during the failed exam in the woods the previous year, bloomed across his skin. Black flames spread from his throat down his chest, across his arms, over his back. Wings, bone and skin wings tore out of his shoulder blades. His skin paled. His eyes burned red. His chakra flared so high the river beneath Naruto's feet rippled. "I will kill you, Naruto," he said. His voice was thicker now, lower, doubled. "I am an Uchiha. I am elite. I am the last of my clan, and I will not stand in your shadow forever. I will kill you, and I will go to Orochimaru, and I will become strong enough to kill the man who killed my brother, and I will burn this entire system down." Naruto looked up at him. "You are welcome to try," he said, "but I warn you, perfection is quite unforgiving, and I will not be patient with you twice in the same year." Sasuke launched. The first attack was a Chidori, the standard one, full power, the technique Kakashi had taught him. He came down out of the sky like a falling star, lightning trailing behind him, the air around him cracking as he moved. He aimed for Naruto's heart. Naruto held up one finger. The Chidori struck the fingertip and dispersed. Every arc of lightning, every scrap of chakra, gone like it had never happened. Sasuke's eyes went wide. His Sharingan saw it. The Sharingan saw everything, every possible reaction, every possible counter, every possible outcome. The Sharingan saw, in zero of the futures it could perceive, any version where Sasuke survived this fight. "Is that it?" Naruto said. "How boring." He moved. The first kick caved in 3 of Sasuke's ribs. The second broke his left arm at the elbow. The third sent him skipping across the river's surface like a stone. He came up coughing. He came up with the curse seal pulsing harder. He came up with his sword drawn. He came up swinging. Naruto caught the sword between 2 fingers. He twisted. The blade snapped. Sasuke stared at the broken hilt in his hand for a half second. The half second was all Naruto needed. His hand was already at the boy's throat. Wait, the absorption began. It was different again. Different from Yagura's. Different from Gaara's. Different from Orochimaru's. This time, Naruto did not pull all of the chakra. He pulled, instead, a particular thread, a black thread that ran through Sasuke's body, twined into every chakra coil, anchored at the curse mark on his neck. He pulled it out 1 inch at a time. The black thread was Orochimaru's mark, the original gift, the seal that had been growing in Sasuke's body for over a year. It came out screaming. Sasuke felt every inch of it leave. He felt the power leave with it. He felt the wings retract. He felt the black flames recede. He felt his Sharingan, which had been burning hotter than it had ever burned, go cool. He felt the long climb of strength he had been climbing for a year be undone in a single breath. He felt himself become smaller. He felt himself become only what he had been on the day he had been born. Naruto opened his hand. Sasuke fell. He landed on the water. The water held him because Naruto had ordered it to. He was on his back. He was breathing. He was looking up at the sky. The sky was the color of wet ash. Naruto looked down at him. "Listen, Sasuke Uchiha," he said. "I have removed Orochimaru's mark from your body. You will not have access to it again. The path you were attempting to take is closed. The man you were attempting to find is, at this moment, in a cave to the south, drinking soup through a straw. If you go to him, he will not have anything to give you because I have left him with nothing to give." He crouched down beside the boy. He spoke evenly. He spoke without anger. He spoke without contempt, which was, in its own way, the deepest insult he had ever paid Sasuke Uchiha. "You hate me," he said. "You hate me because I have made your every achievement feel small. I understand. The hatred is, in your case, justified. I am everything you have spent your life trying to become, and I achieved it without trying. You may carry that hatred for the rest of your life. You may train with it, fight with it, sleep with it, die with it. I do not care. The hatred is yours. It is the only thing I am leaving you with. You, Sasuke coughed. Blood came up. You took everything. I took the things that did not belong to you. The clan you mourned was destroyed by your brother for reasons your brother believed to be necessary. The mark on your neck was given to you by a man who saw you as a vessel. The power you were chasing was a debt you would have spent your life paying. I have removed all of it. What remains is what you were always actually entitled to. A name, 2 eyes, a grudge. Make of them what you will. He stood. Know your place, Uchiha-san. Be small, live a small life, or be large and live a large life, and find me again when you have something worth the effort. I am, as always, almost always available. He turned. He walked across the water. The river accepted his footsteps the way the air accepted his floating. Behind him, Sasuke Uchiha lay on the river surface and screamed at the sky. He screamed for a long time. There was no one to hear him. The pursuit team arrived an hour later. They found him still on the water, still alive, his Sharingan deactivated, his curse mark gone, his body broken, his pride past breaking. They carried him back to Konoha. He spent 6 weeks in a hospital. When he came out, he was very different. He never spoke of Naruto Uzumaki again with hatred. He did not have the energy for hatred. He had something else. It was harder to name. He spent the next 10 years training. He never tried to leave the village again. He built himself a new life out of the things that remained. The thing he was building toward when he trained was no longer a confrontation. It was something more like understanding. He never quite caught up, but he never stopped trying. The years that followed were strange ones. Konoha rebuilt itself around the absence of an enemy and the presence of a boy who had ended the enemy without breaking stride. Streets were repaved. The arena was repaired. New buildings rose where old ones had folded under the weight of the Shikaku's claws. The civilians who walked those streets did so with a different posture than before. They moved like people who had been spared rather than people who had survived. Naruto Uzumaki turned 14 in the middle of that rebuilding and barely registered the date. He spent his days training. The training was a thing he did because he had decided he would. Stagnation offended him in the way an unfinished sentence offends a reader. He worked on his key output in the mornings. He refined the absorption technique in the afternoons, expanding the range from contact only to a meter, then 2 meters, then 5. He developed 3 variations on the death beam without bothering to name any of them. By the end of the season, he could fire a beam that bent in midair and another that split into a dozen smaller beams at the moment of impact, each one finding its own target without any further input from him. He found the work pleasant. The closest thing to pleasant he had ever experienced. The village around him watched the training when it could. Genin sat on rooftops at the edge of the eastern training fields with their lunches spread out like they were watching a festival. Jonin pretended to be patrolling the area. Civilian fathers brought their sons to the corner of the field and pointed and whispered. Naruto allowed all of it. Their attention had somewhere along the way ceased to bother him. He had become, by his own assessment, the village's largest and most unmoving landmark. And landmarks did not concern themselves with the people who came to look. The Hokage handled the bowing. The bowing had become the issue. Naruto would walk down a street and entire shops would empty, the owners bowing in their doorways, the customers bowing where they stood. Children bowed. Old women bowed. A drunk had once attempted to bow from a horizontal position and slid into the gutter with great dignity. Naruto found the practice tedious, and he had told the Hokage so. And the Hokage had drawn up a village ordinance that politely requested the population to refrain from bowing to the Uzumaki boy in public unless the situation specifically called for it. The ordinance had failed. The bowing continued. Naruto stopped mentioning it. The flowers on his apartment doorstep had become a small economy. The building manager, a woman named Kyoko, who had spent 40 years in property management and had developed the unflinching practicality of someone who had outlasted 3 husbands, gathered the offerings every morning and sold the still fresh ones at a stall she had set up at the foot of the stairs. Naruto had once asked her, as she swept the latest delivery into her basket, whether she was profiting from his fame. She had looked up at him without blinking. "Yes," she had said. "Continue," he had told her, and walked past her up the stairs, and she had sold a particularly fine arrangement of lilies to a foreign merchant for double the going rate within the hour. It was a Thursday evening in the late autumn of his 14th year when the Akatsuki sent its first observers. Naruto felt them pass through the village gates at 9:03 in the evening. He was on the rooftop of his building at the time, eating skewers from a paper wrapping, watching the moon. The two chakra signatures that entered the eastern gate were both heavily suppressed, and one of them was using a hinge so thorough that any censor in the village below the rank of jonin would have failed to register the pair as anything other than two traveling merchants. Both signatures were familiar to him in the way a piece of music is familiar after a single hearing. He had noted them weeks ago when their first probing chakra pulses had brushed against the village from a distance of 40 miles. He continued eating his skewers. He gave them 6 minutes to commit to whatever route they had selected. They moved through 3 streets and into the merchant district. They paused near the fish market. They turned down an alley that ran behind the Yamanaka flower shop. They were heading toward his building, but slowly, choosing the path of a man who knew he was being watched and wanted to give his watcher the opportunity to make the first move. Naruto finished his skewers. He folded the paper wrapping. He set it down beside him. He stepped off the rooftop. He did not float. He fell, the 4 stories down to the alley behind the Yamanaka shop, and he landed without a sound on the cobblestones in front of 2 men in long black coats with red clouds embroidered on the fabric. The taller one was holding a wrapped bundle the size and shape of a great sword across his shoulders. The shorter one wore his straw hat low. Both of them stopped walking the moment Naruto landed. The taller one whistled, low and impressed. "You can drop a building on him," he said, "and he doesn't even rattle the silverware." "Itachi-san," Naruto said. "Hoshigaki-san, you are 6 minutes late." The shorter one raised his head. The straw hat tilted back. Itachi Uchiha's eyes were the color of old blood under low light, and they were, even at that moment, already in the early stages of what would become a permanent failure. Naruto could see the strain in the chakra around his pupils. He could see the disease in him the way another person might see a fading bruise on someone's cheek. "Forgive us," Itachi said. His voice was even. "We took the long way to allow you to prepare a welcome. I have prepared nothing. I am eating skewers." Naruto gestured loosely at the rooftop. "I would offer you one, but I have already finished. Walk with me, gentlemen." He turned and began walking down the alley. The two of them, after a heartbeat of consideration, fell in behind him. Kasame Hoshigaki was still grinning. Itachi was watching the back of Naruto's head as a man might watch a doorway he was about to walk through into a room he had been warned about. They walked together to the edge of the eastern training fields. The grass was tall there at that hour, and the moon was up enough to silver everything. Naruto stopped in the middle of the field and turned to face them. He folded his hands behind his back, the way he always did when he wanted to be unambiguous about a refusal to draw a weapon. He inclined his head a few degrees. "Speak whichever truth you came to speak," he said. "I have allotted 10 minutes for this conversation. Whatever portion of it you spend on theatrics will be subtracted from whatever portion remains for actual content." Itachi lowered his straw hat to the grass. "I am Uchiha Itachi. My partner is Hoshigaki Kasame. We are members of an organization called the Akatsuki, and we have been sent to observe the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails." "You omitted the part about the eventual extraction." "I did not consider it relevant at this time." "It is relevant. You may include it." Itachi held his gaze for a moment. He was, Naruto noted, the only Akatsuki member to date who had managed to look at him directly for more than 3 seconds without flinching. There was something in the man that had been worn down to a polished edge, and the edge was at the moment turned inward. "Our leader intends to capture all 9-tailed beasts. The 9 tails is one of them. The plan was constructed before you became what you became. The plan has, since the events at the Mist, been undergoing revisions. I am sure it has. The revisions will continue to fail. Continue. You have already absorbed 2 beasts, the 3 tails, the 1 tail. Our leader's calculations now include the possibility that you have made the extraction technically impossible. I have made it actually impossible. The distinction matters. Kasame laughed. He had a laugh that started in his chest and worked its way up through several throat-shaped chambers before it came out his mouth. It was the laugh of a man who had spent his life finding very few things genuinely funny and was startled when he did. He talks like he reads, Kasame said to Itachi. I told you he would. You did. Naruto looked at Kasame. The shark man was shorter than him by a head and weighed perhaps twice as much, all of it muscle laid over bone in the proportions of a creature that had been born wrong on purpose. He was holding the wrapped bundle that contained Samahada with a casual ease that was the opposite of casual, the way a swordsman with a long history holds a blade he has never had to set down. His chakra, despite the suppression seals, was an enormous hot weight in the air, and it was the largest reservoir Naruto had encountered in a human body to date. Hoshigaki, he said, you are the strongest of your organization after your leader. Kasame's grin widened. The teeth at the back of his mouth were the color of old ivory. You can feel that. I can. You have been waiting all your life to fight someone who could meet you at your full output. You have spent your career disappointed by every opponent who failed to require your honesty. You have a handful of years left in your body before age begins to take what your enemies have failed to. You are, at this stage of your life, looking primarily for one thing, and that thing is an ending that will mean something. The grin did not move. The eyes behind it did. There was a flicker of something there that Kasame Hoshigaki had not allowed any other living being to see in a long time, and he allowed Naruto to see it because there was nothing else he could do with it now that it had been named. You read me, he said. His voice was lower. You read me right out of my own pages, kid. I have read everyone I have ever met. The reading takes me less time than it takes most people to greet me. Listen carefully, Hoshigaki-san. I will not give your ending to you tonight. I have other work tonight, and I require the rest of your organization to come to me of their own choice, rather than because you have given them a story that scares them. Go back to your leader. Tell him exactly what you have seen here. Tell him the truth without softening any of its edges. Tell him to send everyone he has, because I find it more efficient than hunting them one by one. When he sends you with the rest, I will give you the ending you have been asking for. Kasame stared at him. Then slowly he bowed. It was a real bow. He bent at the waist, his head went down, and he held the position for the count of 2 breaths before he straightened. Promise me, he said. You have my word. Then I'll be there. Itachi spoke into the moment that followed. And me? Naruto turned to him. The silver of the moon was full on Itachi's face. It made him look younger and older at once, the way moonlight can do to a tired face. You did what you were told. You burned a clan you loved, because the men who governed your village told you the alternative was the loss of an entire generation. You have spent every day since then making your brother's hatred something you believe you deserve. That is your choice. It was always your choice. I want you to understand that I know the entirety of it. I know who gave the order. I know who carried it. I know who watched and who did not raise a hand, and who paid for their silence afterward. When the day comes, and it will, I will end you with that full knowledge, and you will face it with no part of the truth left hidden. The silence after that was a long one. I believe you, Itachi said. I expected you to. Will you tell my brother? Naruto considered the question. Eventually. Not while you are alive. He has built himself in a particular shape around a particular grief, and removing the foundation of that grief while the building is still under construction would damage the building. After you are gone, when he is older, when the construction has settled, I will tell him what I know. He will be ready by then. He may even thank me for it. He probably will not. Itachi nodded once. He picked his straw hat up off the grass. He set it back on his head. Naruto-kun, he said, yes, thank you. Naruto did not respond to the thanks. He turned and walked back toward the village, and after a moment, the 2 Akatsuki turned and walked the other way, and the field where they had spoken stayed empty for the remainder of the night. the grass slowly straightening in the places where their feet had pressed it down. By morning, 2 reports had crossed 3 borders. Pain received the first one in his tower in Amegakure and read it 3 times before he set it down. He said very little to Konan as he handed it to her. She read it. She set it back on the desk. "Then he is what they say?" Konan said. "He is more than what they say. The reports have been understating him. He is what we became Akatsuki to confront, and we will lose. You can call it off. I cannot." Pain's 6 bodies were standing in a half circle around the desk, and only one of them spoke at a time, but all 6 watched the paper. "The plan is the plan. If we abandon it, we are nothing. We continue. We continue with the understanding that the cost will be different than we expected." Konan looked at him for a long time. "You are saying we will die. I am saying we will finish." She did not answer that. She left the tower and she went up to the highest balcony of the highest building in the village, and she folded paper cranes for an hour before she came back inside. Each crane had a name written on it in her own hand. She did not show the names to anyone. By morning, the cranes were gone, taken by a wind that had no business being inside an enclosed room, and Konan, who had once seen the world as a place that could be repaired, sat at her desk and began to compose a letter she would never send to a boy she had never met. The second report reached Orochimaru the same morning. He was, at that point, 6 months into his rebuilding. He had spent the first 3 of those months in a soup-fed haze, recovering the basic motor functions of his snake body. He had spent the second 3 months reconstructing his chakra reserves through a regimen of cellular techniques he had refined in his 30s and never had cause to deploy. He was at 12%. He looked, in the dim light of the cave he had retreated to, like a wax figure of himself that had begun to melt. His one remaining loyal subordinate read the report aloud. He was Kabuto Yakushi. He had not yet committed to his teacher's research as fully as he would later. He was still, on that morning, only a brilliant medic with a complicated loyalty problem and an interest in the chemistry of immortality. He stood at the foot of Orochimaru's bed with the report in his hand and read it in the same flat voice he used to read inventory. When he was finished, Orochimaru began to laugh. The laughter was wet. It went on for some time. Kabuto waited. "He has absorbed 2 beasts," Orochimaru said when he could speak. 2, 3 years old in his current incarnation, and he has already collected what we spent decades planning to gather one at a time. Kabuto-kun, this is comedy. This is the universe demonstrating to me that I have spent my entire life arriving 5 minutes after the relevant event. You are still recovering, Sensei. You should rest. I am recovering for a reason. The reason is to outlast him, to outlast everything, to find the body that will accept me and to settle into it, and to wait for the boy to grow bored or careless or distracted, and then to take from him by inches what he took from me in seconds. Orochimaru's eyes opened fully for the first time that day. The yellow in them was thinner than it had been, but the hunger behind it had gained ground in compensation. I have a candidate, a child in the Sound Village, 12 years old, of compatible chakra type. The ritual will take 3 months to prepare. We will perform it under the Earth Country, where the ambient chakra interference will mask my own. Sensei, he found you in the mist. He found you in the forest. He will find you in the Earth Country. He will find a corpse in the Earth Country. By the time he arrives, I will have moved on to the next body. The plan from this point forward is movement, constant movement. He cannot follow what does not stay still. Sensei, Kabuto-kun. He absorbed the 3 tails by holding it for 11 minutes. He absorbed the 1 tail in 14. He drained you in less than a heartbeat in the same building you had spent a year preparing as a trap. The trap was good. It was the best work we had ever done. He drained you anyway. There is no movement that outpaces him. There is no body that will keep him out. I will help you because you are my teacher and because I have given you my life. But I want you to look at me when I tell you this. Orochimaru slowly looked at him. You will die in that cave, Kabuto said. Whatever ritual you perform, whatever body you take, he will find you. He will end you. The end will be permanent this time, because he made a mistake in leaving you alive once, and he is not a creature that makes the same mistake twice. Orochimaru held his gaze for a long moment. "Then I will die in that cave," he said, "and you will help me arrive there, because the alternative is to continue living as a man who was beaten by a child, and I have always preferred a finish to a draw." Kabuto bowed his head. "Yes, Sensei." The preparations took the 3 months Orochimaru had estimated, and at the end of them, in a cave 90 feet beneath the surface of the southern Earth country, the Sannin performed his transmigration ritual on a 12-year-old vessel he had stolen from a coastal village 3 weeks earlier. The ritual was elegant. It was the work of a craftsman at the end of his life, applying his last good idea to a body that did not deserve to be the canvas for it. Orochimaru opened his new eyes and stretched the unfamiliar fingers and laughed in a pitch he had not held since he was a boy. He flexed the new muscles of his arms. He stretched the new spine. He felt for the first time in months, fully present, fully whole, fully possessed of the engine that drove him forward. He raised his head. Naruto Uzumaki was standing in the cave's mouth. The boy had his hands behind his back. The light from the torches Orochimaru had set against the walls cast his shadow long across the stone, and the shadow was a child's shadow, and the figure that cast it was something that wore the silhouette of a child, the way a coat is worn by something that has decided to go in disguise. "Naruto-kun," Orochimaru said. The new voice was high and young, but the inflection was old, and the inflection carried. "I am genuinely impressed that you found me. You restored 12% of your former reserves. The thread was louder than you believed. I performed the ritual under interference. Your ritual was elegant. The interference was clever. Both were inadequate to the task of hiding from me. I have been tracking the thread for 2 weeks. I arrived 3 minutes before the ritual completed. I watched the transfer occur. I let it finish because I wanted you to have the full experience of believing you had succeeded before learning that you had only changed clothes." Orochimaru's smile, which had been a child's smile on a child's face, took on the configuration of an older man's expression and held it there. He lowered his shoulders. He spread his fingers. "I have had time to consider our last meeting. I believe I underestimated you. You did. I will adjust my estimate. You will lack the opportunity. Begin whenever you find your courage. The afternoon is moving." The Sannin's chakra exploded outward in a single wave. The cave brightened. The torches went out and were replaced by the green light of a dozen simultaneous summoning seals. From the ground around him, snakes erupted in every size and configuration available to a man who had spent 6 decades collecting them. The biggest among them was Manda II, a 50-meter constrictor with the temperament of a kicked dog and a hunger that was indistinguishable from anger. The smallest among them were a swarm of needle-thin vipers that filled the air around Orochimaru's head like a halo of black ribbon. He had every technique he had ever owned, layered into the new body with 3 months of preparation. He used all of them. The hidden shadow snake hands extended from his sleeves and crossed the cave in 3 directions at once. The Earth Dragon bullet lifted a section of the floor into the air and hurled it at Naruto's face. The lightning snake strike came from the ceiling, where Orochimaru had pre-prepared a charge that had been gathering for the entirety of the ritual. The Kusanagi extended from his mouth and flew through the air on its own chakra, a self-guided spear. Naruto did not move. The energy barrier handled it. Every snake, every fang, every fragment of stone, the lightning, the blade. They struck the barrier and stopped. The snakes thrashed against the unseen wall. The Earth Dragon broke apart along its own length and fell. The lightning fanned out across the surface of the barrier and dispersed into the cave walls. The Kusanagi struck the barrier point first, held there for a half second, and snapped. Orochimaru kept attacking. He had no other option. His 12% reserves were burning down faster than he had expected because the new body had a different chakra economy than his old one, and he had failed, in the rush of inhabiting it, to recalibrate. He launched the snake sword dance. He attempted the white inflammation, a fire technique he had developed in his 50s and never deployed in combat. He summoned a smaller Manda variant from inside the larger Manda, a layered summoning that was supposed to be his trump card. Naruto absorbed the smaller Manda from inside the larger Manda before it could fully manifest. It took him 2 seconds. The larger manda, robbed of the smaller manda's chakra, collapsed in on itself and reverted to a normal-sized snake. Orochimaru watched it happen. The expression on his stolen child's face moved through several configurations before it settled on the one he had been keeping in reserve since he was 14 years old. And that expression was the look of a man who had run out of ideas. He sank to his knees. The snakes retreated into the floor. The earth seals collapsed. The body Orochimaru wore sagged in the middle as if something inside it had been holding it up and had decided to stop. Naruto walked across the cave floor. He did not hurry. He did not slow. He covered the distance in a few even strides. The snakes parted around his feet without having been ordered to. He stopped a meter from the kneeling Sannin. He looked down. "You told me, the last time we met," he said, "that I was a fascinating specimen. You said you wished to study me up close. I want you to know that I have thought about you in the time since that conversation on 3 occasions. You were the subject of 3 thoughts. Every one of those thoughts was a footnote to a different consideration. You were never worthy of this moment. You were never worthy of any of the moments you engineered for yourself. You were a man who was afraid to die and who did every conceivable terrible thing to avoid the fear, and the fear bought you nothing except a few extra years of being exactly the man you had always been." Orochimaru raised his head. The yellow eyes in the child's face were steady. There was somehow a kind of dignity in them, and the dignity was the dignity of a man who had spent his entire life refusing to apologize and had decided in his last seconds to maintain the streak. "Make it count," he said. "This time," Naruto said, "there is no lesser priority." He placed his hand on the top of the boy's head. The fingers spread. The thumb settled at the temple. The absorption began. It was different from any absorption Naruto had performed before, because Orochimaru's chakra system was a layered architecture of cursed seals, transmigration rituals, snake summons, and decades of scavenged techniques. And to take the man without taking the body required a specificity Naruto had never previously needed. He took the chakra reserves. He took the cursed seal energy threaded through the cells. He took the white snake sage chakra that had been growing in the marrow of every body Orochimaru had ever inhabited. He took the transmigration technique itself, the very thread of intent that connected Orochimaru's soul to the vessel, and he pulled it out of the boy's body the way a tailor pulls a single thread from a finished garment. It took 11 seconds. What slumped to the cave floor was a 12-year-old boy who had been dead for a week and whose body had been animated by a passenger who was now elsewhere, which was to say that the body was finished and the passenger had been sent to wherever passengers went when there was no longer a body capable of carrying them. There was no further struggle. The yellow eyes closed. The mouth opened slightly. The breath stopped without ceremony. Naruto looked down at the body for a moment. "Pathetic," he said, "is the kindest word available to your conclusion." He turned. He walked out of the cave. The snakes that Orochimaru had summoned retreated into the cracks of the floor and did not return, because the chakra that had bound them to their summoner was no longer in the world to call them. The cave settled into its old silence. Above ground, the wind in the trees of the southern earth country picked up, and the boy who had walked out of the cave rose into the air and turned south, toward the place where the next thing on his list was. Word of Orochimaru's death traveled fast among the few people who would have wanted to know. Kabuto Yakushi, in a laboratory 300 miles to the east, felt the disappearance of his teacher's chakra signature and stopped what he was doing. He stood with his hands on the edge of a stone basin for a long time. He had been told this would happen. He had told his teacher it would happen. He had not expected, despite the warning, to feel anything when it did. The feeling that arrived was a feeling he had no good word for, and so he set it aside and began the slow business of inheriting his teacher's research, because that was the only inheritance that had been left to him, and the work required attention. In Konoha, the Hokage received a written message slipped under his office door at midnight by a hand that left no other trace. The message was 3 words long. It said, "He is gone." The Hokage read it. He folded it. He placed it in his desk drawer. He filled his pipe with a hand that was steadier than it had been in years. Naruto's harvest of the Akatsuki began the following month. He started with Sasori. The Suna region had been hosting Sasori of the Red Sand for some months without knowing it. The puppet master had been holed up in a series of cavern complexes outside the village, working on a new generation of human puppets. He had 3 Jonin-level conversions in progress, and a 4th he intended to begin within the week. He had been cautious. He had been thorough. He had been hidden from his own former village's censors for 7 years because his sealed self technique left no chakra signature beyond what the puppet body emitted, and the puppet body was an inert wooden construct that any chakra sensor would read as a piece of furniture. Naruto found him by reading the puppet body's chakra displacement. The displacement was the tell. Sasori, inside his scorpion shell, breathed through internal mechanisms that pushed chakra in patterns the wood would not have produced on its own. The patterns were faint. They were the chakra equivalent of a man whispering inside a sealed barrel. Naruto had been listening for that whisper across the desert for 3 weeks, and on a Monday in the late afternoon, he had narrowed it down to a particular cavern outside the 3rd oasis south of Suna, and on the Tuesday morning he had walked into the cavern's entrance and folded his hands behind his back. "Akasuna no Sasori," he said. "Step out of your shell. I would like to see the man." The cavern was silent for the length of 3 breaths. Then the back wall opened. It was the most elaborate puppet display Sasori had ever performed. The 100 puppets, his red secret technique, the collected souls of 100 elite shinobi he had killed, modified, and bound into wooden bodies, emerged from the rear of the cavern in formation. They came forward in waves. Their joints clicked. Their painted faces looked nowhere in particular. They lifted their weapons in synchrony, and the weapons were every weapon Sasori had ever collected. Chakra blades, poison kunai, retractable claws, internal flamethrowers, a dozen variations on the chained hook. 100 jonin worth of accumulated death moved in a perfect arc into the central chamber. Behind them, on a raised platform of stone, the scorpion puppet that contained Sasori's actual body raised its tail. The tail was 20 feet long. It was tipped with the venom that had taken Chiyo's son, the 3rd Kazekage, and 400 other unnumbered victims. It quivered with anticipation. "You have been watching me for 3 weeks, Sasori said. His voice came through the scorpion's mouth, and the scorpion's mouth had been carved with care. "I noticed in the 2nd week. I have been preparing this welcome ever since. It is an adequate welcome. I am hopeful that I might delay you long enough to learn something interesting about your nature before you remove it from the world. Your hope will be disappointed." Naruto extended his telekinesis. The output was greater than any telekinetic application he had used to date. It had to be. The 100 puppets were an enormous combined mass, and they were in motion, and they were each an independent unit of stored kinetic threat. He extended his awareness across the room, located the chakra thread that Sasori was using to control each puppet, and seized them all at once. 100 puppets stopped in midair. 100 painted heads turned toward Naruto in the same instant. 100 wooden bodies began to compress. Sasori watched. His scorpion eyes were the most expressive thing about him at that moment, and what they expressed was the recognition of a man who had spent his entire life as a puppeteer being puppeteered for the first time. The 100 puppets folded inward, their joints crushed, their internal weapons crumpled. The bodies pressed together at the center of the cavern and became smaller and smaller and smaller, until they were a single dense cube of twisted wood and fragmented metal the size of a traveling chest. The cube fell to the floor. It struck stone. It rolled once and stopped. The scorpion puppet on the platform fired its tail. The tail came forward across the cavern at a speed the eye lost halfway through. Naruto raised his hand. He caught the tail between his thumb and his index finger. He held it there. The tail, 20 feet of polished wood and embedded poison, vibrated in his grip and went still. He walked across the cavern. He pulled the tail with him. The scorpion puppet, attached at the other end, slid forward along the platform and tipped over the edge and fell to the floor and was dragged scraping across the stone toward him as he walked. He stopped in front of the wreckage. He looked down at it. "Open it," he said. "I would prefer to address the man." The scorpion shell split. The two halves came apart along their hinges. From inside, a young man emerged. The body of a young man preserved by puppet techniques at the age of 15, with red hair and eyes that had stopped tracking time decades earlier. The body was small. The body was fragile. The body had a single working organ, the human heart at the center of its chest, the last piece of original Sasori that the man had failed to convert. Naruto reached down. His hand closed around the heart through the chest cavity. "You made yourself into something that could no longer grow," he said. "The decision was yours. The result was inevitable." He closed his hand. The heart came apart in his palm. The body's eyes fixed on a point above Naruto's shoulder and stayed there. Sasori of the Red Sand, who had outlived his grandfather and his parents and all of his students, and most of the people who had ever tried to kill him, ended in 3 seconds in a cavern that smelled of old wood and dust. And the only witness was a 14-year-old boy who had not raised his voice. Naruto wiped his hand on a piece of cloth he produced from his jacket. He left the cavern. The desert wind found him at the entrance and moved his coat, and he turned north and continued on his list. Kakuzu was harvesting bounties in the Iron Country. He had been there for 2 weeks. He was on his 4th target of the trip, and the 4th target had been a missing nin from Kumo with a head price of 28 million ryo, and Kakuzu had collected the head 3 days earlier and was now in the process of converting the head to currency through a broker in a border town. He was, by his own assessment, having a good month. He was extending the visit by a week to see if a 5th target could be acquired. Naruto found him in a tavern at the edge of the broker's town. He walked in through the front door at midday. The tavern was half full. Kakuzu was sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall, his stitched face hidden under a scarf, a cup of soup broth in front of him. Because his current hearts could no longer process solid food efficiently, he saw Naruto enter. His chakra sense told him exactly what had walked through the door before his eyes had time to confirm it. He stood up so fast his chair flipped backward and broke against the floor. The other patrons looked up, looked at Naruto, looked at Kakuzu standing at his broken chair, came to the silent, unanimous decision to leave. The tavern emptied in 11 seconds. The barkeep was the last out, taking the cash drawer with him. The door swung shut. Kakuzu and Naruto looked at each other across the empty room. "Uzumaki," Kakuzu said. His voice was 3 voices speaking through one throat, and the harmony between them was not a harmony any human ear had been designed to enjoy. "Your bounty is 300 million ryo, the largest in recorded history. I have spent the last 40 minutes since I detected you doing the math on whether I can collect it." And the conclusion? The conclusion is that the math does not favor me. I am attempting it anyway. I have nothing else worth attempting. I respect the reasoning. I expected you would. He moved. Kakuzu had 5 hearts. Each heart was a complete chakra system, harvested from a former opponent, integrated into the threads of his body across decades. Each heart corresponded to one of the 5 elemental natures. Each heart was, in effect, a separate jonin grafted onto his frame. He released all 5 at once. The masks lifted off his back through the slits in his cloak. Fire, wind, lightning, earth, water, each one a black creature with mouths of its own, and they detached from his body and arrayed themselves around the room. The fire mask exhaled. A river of flame the width of the tavern came across the floorboards. The wind mask exhaled at the same instant, shaping the flame into a tunneled vortex that doubled its temperature and aimed it at Naruto's chest. The lightning mask discharged a chained bolt at Naruto's left side. The earth mask raised the floor of the tavern into spikes that rushed Naruto from below. The water mask flooded the entire room with a wall of high-pressure water that came in through the broken windows. It was, by any objective standard, an excellent opening. A jonin would have died to it. Several jonin would have died to it. Naruto extended his absorption ability outward at full range. He had spent 3 months refining the ability since the field of his 14th year. It was no longer a contact-only technique. He had developed it into an emanating field that could draw chakra at distance. The field came out of him in a sphere 4 meters across, And inside the sphere, the chakra of every technique in the room began to drain. He was not draining the techniques, he was draining their sources. The 5 masks suspended in the air around the tavern suddenly went still. The flame stopped emerging from the fire mask. The wind cut off. The lightning stopped arcing. The earth fell. The water collapsed back into the floor and ran out through the cracks. The 5 masks hung in space for a moment, disconnected from any chakra, and then they dropped to the floor like 5 wooden carvings. Inside Kakuzu, the 5 hearts went silent at once. He looked down at his own chest. The threads holding his body together, the threads that had held him together for nearly 100 years, went slack. His arms dropped to his sides. His knees gave. He fell forward onto the table he had been eating at, and his head struck the wood, and he did not get up. Naruto walked across the tavern. He stopped beside the table. He looked down at the body. "You collected hearts," he said. "I collected your collection. You should have considered that the math could run in either direction." He stepped over the body and left through the back. He paid the barkeep, who had been watching from across the street, for the broken chair and the spilled soup, and he gave a small additional sum for the inconvenience, and he continued north. Hidan took longer to find than the others. Hidan was not a man who maintained a base. He moved with Kakuzu for most operations, and with Kakuzu dead, he had been assigned a temporary partnership with another Akatsuki member who had not yet arrived. He was, at the moment Naruto began searching for him, in a forest at the edge of the hot springs country, performing a Jashin ritual on a traveling priest he had ambushed at a shrine. The ritual was the elaborate one. Hidan had drawn his cursed circle in the priest's blood, ingested the blood, and was halfway through the agonizing self-mutilation that would transfer the wounds back to the priest he had bound to the circle. He was naked from the waist up. He was laughing. He was, in his own assessment, having an excellent afternoon. Naruto walked into the clearing. Hidan looked up. He was in the middle of driving a spike through his own foot. The spike was halfway in. The priest, on the other side of the cursed circle, was screaming in tandem. Hidan paused with the spike at the halfway point. "You're him," he said. "The kid." "I am. You came to interrupt my service." "I came to end you. The interruption is incidental." Hidan laughed. He pulled the spike out of his foot. He stood up. The wound in his foot remained. He limped 2 steps forward and then ignored the limp. He lifted his scythe from where he had set it against a tree. "You can't end me. I am a servant of Jashin. I am an instrument of his will. He sustains me. Your fancy chakra tricks won't do anything to me. I'm immortal, you understand? Immortal. Not even the kind of immortal where I just heal really fast. The kind where I can be cut into pieces and the pieces still talk. I've tested it. I've enjoyed testing it. I have read your file." "Then you know. I know. I find your particular form of immortality interesting from a chakra architecture standpoint. The thread that connects you to your god is a real thread. I can see it. It runs through your sternum and out the back of your neck. I'm going to follow that thread." He extended his absorption ability. The field came out from his palm, 3 meters across, projected forward like a lens of unseen pressure. Hidan, who had been raising his scythe to swing, felt something inside his own chest move in a direction that nothing inside him had ever moved before. He looked down. He saw nothing on his skin. He felt the wrongness anyway. It was the feeling of having a hand inserted into a part of himself that no hand had ever touched. "What?" he began. Naruto was pulling the Jashin chakra out of him. It came out slowly. Hidan's connection to whatever entity sustained him, and the question of what that entity actually was, had occupied many theological scholars for many years, and Naruto had read most of them and had concluded that the entity was real, but uninteresting, was a thick black thread of foreign chakra that ran through Hidan's body like a vein. Naruto extracted it the way a vintner draws wine from a cask. It came out at a steady rate. The thread emerged from Hidan's chest, drifted through the air across the space between them, and disappeared into Naruto's open hand. Hidan watched it happen. His face moved through several expressions. Confusion, anger, the beginning of fear. He tried to attack. His body was sluggish. His scythe felt heavier than it should. He swung it in a wide arc that should have separated Naruto's head from his shoulders. and the arc fell short by a meter because his body was no longer being driven by the chakra of an immortal god. It was being driven by the body's actual reserves, which were, after 12 years of god-driven combat, severely atrophied. He stumbled. The extraction continued. It took 45 seconds in total. By the end of it, Hidan was kneeling on the cursed circle he had drawn in someone else's blood, holding his own scythe with hands that shook, and the thread that had run through his body for 2 decades was no longer in him. "What did you?" he said. "I removed the chakra of the entity sustaining you. You are a normal man now. Your life force is your own. Your wounds are your own." He looked down at himself. He was bleeding from the foot. He was bleeding from the chest where he had cut himself for the ritual. He was bleeding from a half-dozen places where he had self-mutilated for reasons his god-fueled metabolism had previously made trivial. The bleeding, with his ordinary chakra, was no longer trivial. He was, by Naruto's estimate, 4 minutes from unconsciousness. He looked up. "Jashin-sama will." Naruto fired a death beam through his open mouth. The beam exited the back of his skull and continued through 3 trees behind him before it lost coherence. Hidan's body fell sideways across the cursed circle, and the priest tied to the other end of the circle, no longer bound by any chakra to his captor, sat up and looked at the corpse and then at Naruto, and then at the corpse again. "Your god had adequate chakra reserves," Naruto told the body. The rest of him was disappointing. He freed the priest with 2 cuts of a kunai he had taken from Hidan's belt, set the priest in the direction of the nearest road, and turned south. The next on his list was Deidara, and Deidara was traveling through the cliffs of Iwagakure's eastern border, and Naruto wanted to reach the cliffs before sundown. He did. The fight took place above a canyon at the moment when the sun was halfway down the sky and the shadows had grown long in the rocks below. Deidara had taken one of his giant clay birds. He had been on his way to a rendezvous with Sasori, which was a rendezvous that would no longer occur for reasons Deidara did not yet know. He was airborne over the canyon when Naruto rose into the air beside him and folded his arms. "Iwa missing nin Deidara," Naruto said. "I have been told you consider yourself an artist." Deidara nearly fell off his bird. He recovered. He fixed the boy with the visible eye glare that had served him well in many previous encounters and worked far less well in this one. "Who the hell are you, You know who I am. Konoha Jinchuriki, Uzumaki. Right. Deidara was already reaching into his clay pouch. The hand inside the pouch was working. "I've been looking forward to this, I get to be the artist who turned the perfect organism into a sculpture. They'll write songs about me." "They will not." "Yeah, they will. Watch. C4. The bird below him exploded. It was the technique he had been preparing, C4 Garuda, a technique he had refined over years and used only twice. The clay bird detached from him at the moment of his command and rose into the sky above the canyon. It expanded. It became, in 3 seconds, an enormous clay Garuda, the size of a small temple, hanging in the air 100 meters above them. It opened its mouth. From its mouth, a fine white mist began to descend across the canyon. The mist was the actual technique. It was a cellular-level explosive cloud, capable of detonating the individual cells of any organism it touched. There was no defense for it. There was no jutsu in any school in any nation that would protect a body from being reduced cell by cell to its component dust. Naruto walked into it. He walked. He moved on his ki across the air as if walking on a polished floor. He passed the boundary of the cloud. The mist closed around him. The cellular detonations began. They occurred. They produced no result because the energy barrier around Naruto's body operated at a scale several orders below the cellular level, and the detonations resolved themselves on the surface of the barrier without any effect on what was inside. He continued walking. He emerged from the other side of the cloud. He was in front of Deidara now, 3 meters away, hovering in the air above the canyon with his hands in his pockets. Deidara stared. "That was your masterpiece," Naruto said. "I want you to know that I observed it. I want you to know that I'm not entirely without aesthetic appreciation. The mist had a particular quality of dispersal that was elegant in its way. I will give you that much credit." Deidara reached for his last technique. His hand went to his own chest. He was preparing to bite into the C0, to detonate his entire body, the suicide technique he had developed for the moment he could no longer escape. He was, in his last conscious moment, fully committed to the bite. Naruto's hand closed on his shoulder before he finished the movement. The absorption was the third Naruto had performed that week, and it was the most efficient one yet. He took Deidara's chakra at full draw, the explosion release reserves, the modified clay summoning capacity, the Kekkei Genkai that allowed the artist to mold chakra into clay. He took the C0 detonation potential out of the man's cells before the man could complete the trigger. By the time Deidara's teeth closed on the mouth in his palm, there was no chakra left in him to detonate. The mouth closed on dry skin. The bite produced nothing. Deidara looked down at his hand. He looked at Naruto. His mouth opened. He was about to speak. He never managed it. The absorption took the rest of him. He went limp in Naruto's grip, and Naruto let go and the body dropped through the air toward the canyon floor far below. The clay Garuda above them, robbed of its master's chakra, broke apart and rained down across a mile of empty rock. That was the lesser Akatsuki finished. The greater ones remained. Naruto turned south again. He found Itachi Uchiha 3 weeks later, in a forest near the Rain Country border. The finding had been deliberate on both sides. Itachi had been moving toward the border for months, knowing that Naruto was coming, and Naruto had let the convergence occur without rushing it, because the meeting at the end of the convergence required a particular setting, and the setting required time to ripen. The forest was old. The trees had been growing for 200 years without interruption. The light through the leaves was green gold in the late afternoon, and the air had the particular thickness that forests develop when they have been left alone long enough to forget that men exist. Itachi was sitting against a tree. He had been sitting there for 3 days, by Naruto's reading of his chakra. He had been resting. He had been waiting. His body had been failing in measurable increments across those 3 days, because the disease he carried had reached the stage where bed rest was no longer an effective treatment, and only postponement remained. Naruto walked into the clearing. He stopped in front of the tree. He sat down across from Itachi, in the way that two old acquaintances sit down to a conversation they have both rehearsed. "You came early," Itachi said. "I told you I would." "How early?" 3 weeks. Your estimate was optimistic. The disease has been progressing faster than your readings indicated." Itachi nodded. He had known. He had not told anyone, because there had been no one to tell. "You know everything," he said. "I know everything that is in any document the Hokage's archives still hold, and I know everything that is held in the memory of every Uchiha I have read in passing on the streets of Konoha across the last 4 years. I know what Danzo ordered. I know what Hiruzen failed to prevent. I know what the council voted in the room where the vote was taken. I know what Shisui chose. I know what you chose. I know what you have done since, and what you have refused to do, and the small adjustments you have been making to Akatsuki's plans from the inside to slow the worst of them. I know that Sasuke's life is the axis around which every action of yours has rotated for 10 years. I know all of it." Itachi was quiet for a moment. "Then you know why he cannot find out from anyone except me, and only after I am gone. He will find out from me. The timing will be correct. He is older than he was. He is becoming someone who can carry it without breaking. Your withholding of the truth has done the work it was meant to do. It is no longer required, and the relinquishment is what I am here to perform. You are here to kill me. I am here to end the arrangement. Your body has 3 weeks by my reading. The disease will take you in a manner that will be slow and unpleasant, and that will not be a fitting closing to the work you have done. I will do it correctly. There is a difference between the two endings. You have earned the difference." Itachi looked at him for a long time. His eyes were almost gone now. He could see the shape of Naruto in front of him and the brightness of Naruto's chakra and very little else. The forest beyond was a green blur. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" "For all of them. For the way I... You were a child," Naruto said. "You were a child given an order that no child should have been given, by men who should have known better than to ask, and you executed it because the alternative was worse. You have spent every day since then carrying the consequences of a decision that was correctly made, and that should never have been required of you. You owe an apology to no one in this matter. The men who owe the apology are mostly already dead. The few remaining will not live much longer. Sasuke. He will know. He will hate me briefly for telling him. He will then turn the hatred toward its proper target. The proper target will already be dead by the time he finds it. He will be left with the hatred and nothing to do with it. And that is the moment in which a man becomes either something useful or something destructive. And Sasuke Uchiha, by my estimate, has a 68% chance of becoming the useful version. I find those odds acceptable. He will find his way. Itachi closed his eyes. Behind the closed eyes, the Sharingan stopped, and his face softened. He looked younger. He looked like a teenager who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just been told he could set it down. Naruto-kun, yes, make it fast. I have not had a full breath in some weeks. I will. Naruto reached forward. He placed 2 fingers against Itachi's temple. He sent a single pulse of ki inward, not absorbing, not destroying, but adjusting. He shut down the pain receptors first, then the fatigue receptors, then the conscious processing of the disease itself. Itachi's face relaxed further. The labor of his breath, which had been hard for years, became light. He was unconscious before 3 seconds had passed. Naruto held the position for 8 more seconds. He let Itachi's body do what it had been preparing to do for years. He provided no resistance and offered no acceleration. The end came as the body's own choice, a long exhalation that did not return, and Itachi Uchiha, who had killed his clan at 13 and protected his brother with every breath of the 11 years that followed, and had been hated for both decisions by people who had no idea which one was which, slipped out of his life without further effort. Naruto sat across from the body for a long time after. He had not expected the feeling that arrived. He had not expected a feeling at all. The category he eventually filed it under was the feeling of ending something that deserved better. He had used the same category once before for the young Anbu in the field at the very beginning of his current incarnation, and he found that the category was now permanent and that there were going to be other entries in it before his work was done. He arranged Itachi's hands in his lap. He smoothed the front of his cloak. He stood. He returned to Konoha that night. He went directly to Sasuke's apartment. He knocked. Sasuke opened the door in his sleeping clothes and looked at him, and something in Naruto's face must have communicated the news in advance because Sasuke's posture changed before any word was exchanged. Itachi Uchiha is dead, Naruto said. He died without pain. I was with him. He spoke of you. Sasuke stood in the doorway for a long moment. Who killed him? I did. Why? Because he was already dying, and he had earned a better ending than the one his body was preparing for him. I gave him the better ending. I will tell you the rest of what I know if you would like me to. There is more. There is a great deal more. I will tell you tonight, or in a year, or in 5 years, depending on when you would like to hear it. Sasuke leaned against the doorframe. He closed his eyes. He stayed that way for some time. Tonight, he said. Naruto came in. He sat at the small table in Sasuke's kitchen. Sasuke sat across from him. Naruto told him everything. He told him about Danzo. He told him about Hiruzen. He told him about the council. He told him about Shisui's eye and Itachi's choice, and the 100 small ways Itachi had tried, in the years afterward, to make sure Sasuke survived. He left no part of it hidden. He answered every question Sasuke asked, and Sasuke asked many of them, and the questioning went on until the sky outside the apartment began to lighten with the approach of dawn. When Sasuke finally stopped asking, he was crying. He had been crying for several hours. He had not noticed when it started. I will kill them, he said. Danzo, the council, all of them. You will not need to. What? I will be addressing all of them within the next week. By the time you have decided how you want to handle them, they will be already handled. I am offering you an alternative use of your hatred. I would advise you to consider it. Sasuke looked at him. His eyes were red. The Mangekyo Sharingan he had unlocked some months earlier was activated without his having decided to activate it. What alternative? He said. Live, Naruto said. Live well. Build something with your name on it that does not have your brother's blood as its foundation. He died asking that of you. He died asking nothing else of you. I would advise you to consider giving it to him." Sasuke did not answer immediately. He stayed at the table. Naruto sat with him. The sky outside continued to lighten. Eventually, Sasuke nodded once, and Naruto rose and let himself out of the apartment, and the door closed behind him as the first edge of the morning sun touched the rooftops. Sasuke went to his bedroom. He closed the door. He did not come out for 3 days. When he did, he was thinner and steadier, and the Mangekyu had been deactivated, and he had begun, as some part of him must have always known he would, the slow work of building something that would eventually justify the brother who had bought him the time. He never spoke of Naruto with hatred again. The hatred was directed elsewhere now, and the elsewhere was being handled by someone who had, in his own way, told Sasuke that handling it was no longer the younger Uchiha's problem. That evening, Pain attacked Konoha. The attack was a thing the Akatsuki leader had been planning since the day he had read the first report on Naruto. Pain had concluded, with the cold honesty he applied to all his own plans, that he could not extract the Nine Tails from a host who had become what Naruto had become. He had concluded, further, that the host would eventually come for him regardless of whether he attempted the extraction, because the host was systematically eliminating Akatsuki and would arrive at the leader's door whether or not the leader stayed in his tower. Given the inevitability, Pain decided to make the meeting occur on his own terms. He would draw Naruto out by attacking the village. He would force Naruto to come to him in a setting Pain had prepared. He would face him at full strength with all 6 bodies in a coordinated assault of the kind that had reduced larger villages to rubble in single afternoons. He arrived in Konoha at the beginning of the evening. Naruto was 40 miles away. He was out hunting the last lesser Akatsuki, an unaffiliated rogue who had loosely associated with the organization and who had been on Naruto's list as an inventory item rather than a priority. He was in the middle of that inventory work when the village's distant chakra pulse jumped, all at once, by an enormous magnitude. He turned. He did not finish the rogue. He left him alive. He flew. He covered the 40 miles in 6 minutes. By the time he arrived, the village was in the middle of what would have been, by any historical measure, the worst attack on its perimeter since the Night of the Nine Tails. Pain Shinra Tensei had been deployed at a scale feasible. Pain had been holding in reserve for years, an output that had required the chakra reserves of all 6 paths combined into one strike. The wave had leveled a kilometer-wide radius in a single push. Buildings had been folded into their own foundations. The eastern third of the Hokage mountain had cracked across both faces. The arena where the Chunin exams had been held was a crater. The hospital had been shifted 6 meters from its foundations and was tilting. Jinin and Chunin and Jonin were running through the streets. Civilians were screaming. The death toll was already in the hundreds, and the wave had passed less than 2 minutes earlier. The 6 paths of pain were still in the air above the village, fanned out in formation, beginning the second wave. Naruto rose above the wreckage of the eastern district. He took in the situation at a glance. He folded his hands behind his back. He spoke once, projected through his ki across the entire village, every shinobi and civilian hearing him at once. "Stand still. Take cover. The intervention has arrived. The remaining work will be performed at altitude." He rose past the rooftops. He continued upward until he was at the level of the 6 paths. He stopped facing them across a span of about 100 meters. "6 bodies," he said. "I will address each of you individually." Pain, speaking through the Deva path, the body that had been Yahiko in a previous life, looked at him with the eyes of all 6 bodies at once. The Rinnegan in each body was active. The chakra in each body was at maximum output. 6 different chakra signatures, all sourced from one consciousness 300 miles away, all pointed at one boy. "Naruto Uzumaki," Pain said. The voice came from the Deva path. "I am the answer to a world that has decided pain is acceptable. I have come to teach this village what its decisions cost. You are a man who suffered as a child and decided that suffering granted authority. The decision was incorrect. I will be addressing the incorrectness across the next several minutes." He moved. The animal path was the first he reached. He selected it because it was the most logistically dangerous path. the one that summoned the various enormous creatures Pain used to overwhelm a battlefield. The animal path was already in the middle of a summoning sequence when Naruto arrived in front of it. A giant rhinoceros was emerging from a summoning array 50 meters across. A multi-headed dog was emerging from a second array. A drill-billed bird was emerging from a third. Naruto extended his telekinesis through the summoning arrays. The summons, halfway through their manifestation, had partially formed bodies in incomplete chakra anchoring. He grabbed each of them at the chakra thread level, where the summon was still tethered to the summoning realm. He twisted the threads. The summons detonated from inside. The rhinoceros came apart in a spray of red. The multi-headed dog went silent and vanished. The drill-billed bird collapsed in on itself. The animal path, mid-hand sign for a fourth summon, looked at the wreckage of the first three. Its mouth opened. Naruto fired a death beam through the mouth. The beam exited the back of the head and continued upward into the sky. The animal path's body fell. It struck a rooftop 40 meters below and did not move. That was the first. The Preta path came at him next. The Preta path was Pain's absorption path, the body designed to drain chakra from any technique it touched. It came forward in a charge, hands extended. It clamped both hands onto Naruto's left arm at the elbow, and the absorption began. For 2 seconds, the Preta path drained ki out of Naruto's arm at a rate of 300 chakra units per heartbeat. Naruto increased his output. He pushed his ki up through the Preta path's absorption channels at 400 per heartbeat, then 500, then 1,000. The Preta path's chakra coils, designed to handle absorption at any rate but with their own structural maximum, began to glow. The glow traveled up the path's arms and into its torso. The chakra coils began to overheat. The Preta path tried to release. It could not. Naruto was holding its hands in place with his other hand. The output continued. The Preta path's chakra coils incinerated from the inside. The absorption ended in a brief flash of internal combustion, and the body that fell away from Naruto's arm was a husk with smoke coming out of its eyes. That was the second. The Naraka path came next. The Naraka path was the soul extraction path, the one that summoned the King of Hell. The King of Hell rose out of the air behind the Naraka path body, an enormous purple head wearing a horned helmet, with a mouth that opened to show fangs the size of houses. The King of Hell reached forward with 2 enormous purple hands. The hands closed around Naruto's head from both sides. They began the soul extraction protocol, a Rinnegan-derived technique that allowed Pain to interrogate any soul, judge it, and either return it to its body or consume it. The hands tightened. The protocol began. The King of Hell searched for Naruto's soul. What it found, looking back at it from inside the body it was searching, was not what it had been built to process. The King of Hell pulled back. It was a reaction Pain had never seen in his Naraka path before. The King of Hell, an extension of his own Rinnegan, had encountered something that exceeded its capacity for evaluation. The protocol failed. The hands released. The face of the King of Hell in the air behind the Naraka path looked at Naruto with an expression. Pain himself was reading for the first time, and the expression was something close to fear. "That was an interesting attempt," Naruto said. "I would like to thank you for it." He grabbed the Naraka path's head with both hands. He absorbed the Rinnegan chakra out of the path's eyes directly. The King of Hell, sustained by the Naraka path's eyes, faded as the eyes drained. The path's body dropped. The King of Hell went with it. That was the third. The Asura path came at him next. The Asura path was the mechanical path, the one with the missile launchers and the laser eyes and the chakra cannon mounted in its chest. It opened up with everything at once. A barrage of mechanical projectiles, energy beams, and explosive ordnance that filled the sky around Naruto with smoke and fire. The energy barrier handled all of it. Naruto walked forward through the barrage. The barrier flashed where the projectiles struck. The barrier did not buckle. Naruto reached the Asura path. He took it apart with his bare hands. He pulled the mechanical arms off at the shoulders. He pulled the chest cannon out through the front of the body. He removed the head from the neck. The dismantling took 12 seconds. The pieces fell across a wide area of rooftops. That was the fourth. The human path was the most disturbing of the paths in its method of attack. The human path's specialty was the soul reading technique, in which the path inserted its hand directly into a target's chest and grasped the soul itself. It had been used on countless prisoners across the years, and it had never, in any application, failed. The human path closed the distance. Its hand went into Naruto's chest. The hand went through Naruto's energy barrier because the technique operated at a metaphysical layer. The barrier was not designed to filter. The hand emerged from Naruto's back, on the other side of his torso, and the human path's fingers closed around something at the center of his chest. The fingers tightened. The fingers tried to pull. Nothing moved. Naruto looked down at the arm that ran through his sternum. He raised an eyebrow. There is a long-running argument among scholars about whether beings of my construction have souls in the conventional sense, he said. I have read most of the scholars. I find the argument uninteresting. What I can tell you, human path, is that whatever is in here, you do not have the grip for it. He closed his hand around the human path's wrist. The absorption began through the wrist. He drew the Rinnegan chakra out of the path's body in 8 seconds. The hand inside his chest went limp. Naruto lifted the path off his arm by the wrist and dropped the empty body onto the rooftop below. That was the 5th. The Deva path was last. It was the strongest. It was the closest thing to Pain himself, the body Yahiko had once worn, the one with the gravity techniques and the executive control of the others. It was, with the others gone, the only path remaining. It rose into the air to meet him. Shinra Tensei. It said the technique was a cone of pushing force deployed in a focused beam at Naruto's chest. The cone struck. Naruto was thrown back across the air. He decelerated, halted, and returned. The Deva path attempted Bansho Tenin, the inverse technique, the pulling technique. It pulled Naruto forward. Naruto allowed himself to be pulled and arrived at the Deva path's position, moving faster than the technique's design accounted for. He grabbed the Deva path's face with his hand. He pressed his palm flat against the path's eyes. The Deva path attempted Chibaku Tensei, the moon call technique. Pain had been holding this in reserve. It was the technique that had won the Akatsuki most of its battles. He gathered the gravitational core in the air above Konoha. He drew material in from a kilometer of the surrounding earth. The core grew. The core lifted into the sky. From the orbital altitude where Pain had aimed it, fragments of dust and rock began to descend, called by the core, drawn toward it from every direction. A new moon was forming over the village. It was the size of a small mountain. Adequate, Naruto said. He looked up at the assembling moon. He raised his free hand. He fired one focused beam of ki straight upward. The beam struck the gravitational core at the center of the assembling moon. It punched through. It exited the other side. The core breached, lost cohesion. The moon disassembled. The fragments that had been drawn into orbit fell harmlessly out into a wide arc and rained down across empty fields outside the village. The assembling structure became, in the span of 3 seconds, debris. He returned his attention to the Deva path. The absorption took 6 seconds. The Rinnegan in both eyes drained. The Deva path went limp under his hand. He let it drop. That was the 6th. The village below was silent. The shinobi who had been holding their positions in the rubble were watching. The civilians who had taken cover were peering from windows. Above the wreckage, a 14-year-old boy hung in the air with the chakra of 6 Rinnegan-bearing paths, newly added to a body that had already absorbed 2-tailed beasts and a Sanin. He inclined his head north, toward the rain country. He flew. He covered the distance to a Megakure in under 20 minutes. He arrived above the rain-soaked city in the late evening, with the actual city's actual rain falling around him and through him, because the rain in a Megakure was Pain's rain, generated by his sensing technique, and the rain knew he had arrived. The clouds over the city rippled. The chakra signature of Konan moved on a high tower. Beneath that, in a sealed chamber, the chakra signature of Nagato was a dim, flickering thing. Naruto descended through the rain to the sealed chamber. The chamber was at the top of the tallest building. It was a circle of metal walls and metal floor and metal ceiling, with a central platform on which a body lay. The body was a tall, thin man with red hair and skin pulled tight over bones and eyes that were pinwheels of gray-purple chakra. He was attached by a network of black metal rods to a large mechanical apparatus that fed his chakra to the 6 paths Naruto had just dispatched. The apparatus was now silent. The paths were drained. The man was the only chakra signature in the room. Konan was standing beside the platform. She looked up when Naruto entered. She was holding a paper rose in one hand. She had been holding it for some time. Naruto stopped just inside the doorway. He looked at her. He did not raise his hands. "Konan," he said. "I have been here," she said. "I will continue to be here for the duration of whatever you have come to perform. You are not on my list. I do not require to be on your list. I am here regardless." He is at the edge of it. "Stand back and let me finish it cleanly. I will not harm you, and I would prefer not to engage with you at all." Konan looked at him. She had been expecting many things. She had been expecting the offer to be made differently. After a moment, she stepped aside. She moved to the wall of the chamber. She watched. Naruto walked to the platform. Nagato raised his head. The Rinnegan in his eyes still glowed, dimmer than they had a few minutes earlier, but glowing. He had felt every path die. He had felt the failures arrive in sequence. He had spent the time between the first death and Naruto's arrival, considering the speech he intended to give at this moment. He gave it. He spoke about pain. He spoke about the village he had been raised in, and the war that had taken his parents, and the cycle of grievance that had defined his life. He spoke about the world and the ways in which the world refused to break the cycle. He spoke about his goal of using the tailed beasts to create a single, indivisible weapon that would hold the world's attention long enough to teach it what peace was. He spoke for 4 minutes, in the tone of a man who had rehearsed the speech across years and was delivering it for the first time aloud. Naruto listened. When Nagato had finished, Naruto inclined his head a few degrees. "I have heard versions of that speech before. The version you have given is more thoughtful than most. I will give you that credit. The thoughtfulness does not change the fundamental error. You believe that suffering grants you the right to remake the world. The suffering grants you experience. The right is something you have given yourself, and the giving was unauthorized. There is no authority to give it," Nagato said. "The authority does not exist. I have made do with what is available. You could have built a different thing. The thing you built was the thing your grief recommended to you. You took the recommendation. You should have argued with it. There were other voices in your head, and you decided which ones to listen to." Nagato attempted Rinne Rebirth. It was the technique he had been holding in reserve, the technique he had developed in part to revive the dead at the cost of his own life. It was the only technique he had remaining that had not been demonstrated. He activated it. The chakra began to flow from his body outward, channeling toward the conceptual layer. The souls of the dead waited for return. Across Konoha, the dead from Pain's attack, hundreds of them, civilians and shinobi alike, began to stir. Naruto closed the distance between himself and Nagato in less than a second. He placed his hand on Nagato's wrist. He extended his absorption ability into the technique mid-channel. The Rinne Rebirth's chakra flow reversed. Naruto pulled the technique's fuel back through Nagato's body and into himself, taking the chakra cost of the revival without completing it. The technique stalled. The dead in Konoha settled back into their bodies, then settled out of them, then resolved into the simple condition of having been killed earlier. The reversal cost Nagato the chakra he had budgeted for the revival without giving him the revival itself. He looked at Naruto. "You took the cost," he said. "You took the cost without the result. I removed the fuel before the engine could finish its stroke. The result was inaccessible to you the moment I arrived. I let you attempt the technique because the attempt was your last act of will, and I will not deprive a man of his last act of will. The act has been performed. It is complete. You have nothing further to attempt." Naruto placed his hand on Nagato's forehead. The absorption that followed was the most thorough he had performed since Orochimaru. He took the Rinnegan chakra out of Nagato's eyes directly through the forehead, traveling through the optic nerves into the chakra organs that produce the dojutsu, draining each organ in sequence. The pinwheels in Nagato's eyes faded. They became gray. They became colorless. They became, at the end, the eyes of an ordinary thin man with red hair. Nagato exhaled. That was kinder than I expected, he said. You built something real once, Naruto said. The desire to address suffering was a real desire. It became, across years, something else. That is a common tragedy. It does not make you unique. Goodbye, Nagato. He sent a single targeted pulse of ki into the man's brainstem. The end was instant. He turned to Konan. She was still holding the paper rose. I will not interfere with you, he said. You may take him. You may take what remains of his body and bury it where you choose. I would advise you, in the time after this, to consider the rest of what the two of you built before the work became what it became. The work was, in places, real. The two of you saved children together. The two of you kept the rain village fed during a famine. The two of you did things that would have been worth a life if those had been the only things you did. I want you to know that I observed those things in the records and that I am leaving you to remember them because someone should. Konan looked at him. Why are you telling me this? Because you are the only person in the recent history of this organization who I have not personally ended. I find that I have something close to pity for you. The pity is unusual for me. I would prefer to express it correctly while it is present. Konan was silent for a long time. He was kind to me, she said. Before, when we were children, I know. She folded 3 new paper cranes from the air around her, using only her chakra, and set them on Nagato's chest beside the body. She bowed to Naruto. She left the chamber by a window, transforming her body into paper as she passed through the opening. And the wind took her north and across the border into a country whose name she had chosen for her future, and which Naruto did not need to know. He stayed in the chamber for a moment after she was gone. He looked at Nagato's body. He looked at the paper cranes on the chest. He left. He returned to Konoha. He resumed the inventory of his list. The work continued. The work was very nearly complete. Obito Uchiha came for him 3 days later. Obito had been watching the elimination of the Akatsuki from a distance the entire time. He had been recalculating his plan in real time as each member fell. The recalculations had reached a point where they all converged on the same result, which was that the plan was finished, and the only choice remaining to him was the choice of how to engage with the result. He chose to come in person. He opened a Kamui rift in a clearing outside Konoha at the middle of an afternoon. He stepped through. He emerged into the clearing, and he removed his mask before Naruto could remove it for him. Because he wanted the last of his pride to be his own work rather than someone else's. Naruto was already in the clearing. He had felt the Kamui forming 12 seconds before it opened. He had positioned himself at the precise spot where the rift would emerge. He was waiting when Obito stepped through. He was facing him with his hands behind his back. Obito's face was half scarred. His left eye was the Sharingan. His right eye was the Rinnegan, taken from Nagato's corpse before any other party could retrieve it. He looked older than his years. He looked like a man who had spent decades pretending to be many other men and was, at the moment, having difficulty remembering which one of them he had originally been. You know who I am, he said. Uchiha Obito, reported dead at Kanabi Bridge, recovered by Madara Uchiha in the cave system beneath the bridge, trained, across years, into a vessel for someone else's plan. The handler of Yagura, the architect of the Nine Tails attack on the night of the 4th Hokage's death, the wearer of 3 different masks in 3 different decades. I have known the entirety of you for 2 years. Then you know what I am attempting. You are attempting to put the world to sleep. You have decided that reality costs you too much, and you have decided that the world should be relieved of reality on your behalf. I understand the impulse. I understand it the way I understand why a child fears the dark. The understanding does not make the goal acceptable. Obito attacked. He attacked with everything. He had, since the Rinnegan transplant, developed combat capabilities that exceeded any single-body opponent Naruto had faced. The Kamui let him phase through physical attacks. Matter passed through him, and he emerged unharmed. The Rinnegan let him use the gravitational push and pull techniques. The Sharingan let him predict response patterns. He had a lifetime of accumulated war experience layered into a body that could not be touched. The fight took 9 minutes. Naruto adjusted to the Kamui in 4 exchanges. The intangibility worked on a phase cycle. Obito was solid for a fraction of a second between his intangible periods, and that fraction was when his attacks could connect. Naruto fired death beams timed to arrive at the exact moment of Obito's solidity. The first 3 missed. The 4th caught him in the shoulder. The 5th caught him in the leg. By the 7th, Obito was bleeding from 3 locations, and his Sharingan was tracking the timing problem, attempting to adjust the phase cycle to a non-uniform pattern. The non-uniform pattern bought him an additional 2 minutes. In the 11th exchange, Naruto extended his absorption ability through the air to a range of 8 meters and grabbed the chakra of Obito's left Sharingan from a distance. It was a technique he had never deployed at that range before. He pulled, and the Sharingan chakra came across the space between them, traveling through Obito's solid phase, through his intangible phase, through both, because the absorption operated at a chakra architecture level rather than a physical one. Obito's left eye went gray. The Kamui phase cycle went out of synchronization. The intangibility began to falter. The phases became predictable again. The non-uniform adjustment Obito had built collapsed. Naruto closed the distance in a single step. His hand closed around Obito's throat. He held him in the air, his feet a foot above the clearing floor. He did not absorb him. He held him. "You chose this," he said, "every step of the way. The grief was real. The love for Rin was real. The choice was always yours. Madara provided you with a path. He did not put you on it. You decided to walk it, because the alternative was returning to a world that had taken what you wanted, and you preferred reshaping the world to learning to live in it." Obito was silent for a moment. His remaining Sharingan looked at Naruto with something that was past defiance and into a kind of weary recognition. "Rin," he said. She would have been horrified. You have known that since you woke up in Madara's cave. You have spent the years after pretending that the version of her you had built in your memory was the version that would have approved. The version of her in your memory is a fiction. The actual woman would have asked you to stop and would have hated what you became. Obito closed his remaining eye. "Do it?" Naruto did. He absorbed Obito Uchiha in 11 seconds, taking the Sharingan, the Rinnegan, the chakra reserves, the cellular techniques layered into the man across decades. The body that fell from his hand was small and tired, and the face on the body was the face of a teenager who had, in another life, loved a girl from his squad and lost her in a way that his mind had been unable to accept. Naruto set the body down on the grass of the clearing. He arranged the hands. He stood for a moment. "You should have tried to live without her," he said. "Other people have. The trying is what we owe the dead. You did not try. That was the failure. The rest was footnote." He left the clearing. He did not look back. The work was nearly finished. 2 more. Madara Uchiha rose from his coffin 3 weeks later. The rising was performed by Kabuto Yakushi, who had inherited his teacher's research and refined it past anything Orochimaru had achieved. The Edo Tensei Kabuto cast on Madara was an enhanced version of the technique, with 3 additions of his own design. The body that emerged from the coffin was the body of Madara Uchiha at the peak of his power, with both Sharingan, with the Rinnegan added back through a stored cellular sample, with the Hashirama cell modifications Madara himself had implanted in his old age, and with Kabuto's enhancements layered over all of it. The body was, by Kabuto's measurement, the strongest single shinobi in recorded history. Madara opened his eyes. He stretched his fingers. He flexed his back. He stood. He looked at Kabuto. Kabuto, at a distance of 20 meters, was holding the Edo Tensei seal in the standard configuration, and was watching with the careful attention of a man who had cast a difficult technique and was waiting to see whether the result would obey him. The result did not obey him. Madara broke the Edo Tensei control immediately. He had been the strongest shinobi alive at his death, and he had been working on counters to control techniques his entire life, and the breaking was a thing he performed without effort. He looked at Kabuto across the cavern and considered for a moment killing him. He decided against it. Kabuto had done him a useful service. He could be killed later after the rest of the work was complete. "Where is the Uzumaki boy?" Madara said. "In Konoha." "And the Kyuubi?" "Inside him, along with the 3 tails, the 1 tail, the Rinnegan from Nagato, the Sharingan and Rinnegan from Obito." He has been collecting them, Madara-sama. He has been collecting all of them. Madara was silent for a long moment. I see. He left the cavern. He did not walk. He did not run. He flew on a chakra construct he had developed in his final years, a fire eagle that supported him on its back and carried him at the speed of a sustained attack jutsu. He crossed the distance to Konoha in 3 hours. He did not bother to approach in stealth. He arrived above the village in full daylight and announced himself by pulling a meteor down from orbit. The meteor fell. It struck a field outside the eastern gate. The crater was a mile across. The shockwave knocked down the trees in a 5-mile radius. The village's chakra sensors went dark from the impact pressure. The civilians in the eastern district fell to the ground from the ground motion. Naruto rose from the crater. He had been in the field at the moment of impact. He had elected to remain in the path of the meteor, partly because evading it would have been undignified, and partly because he wanted Madara to see clearly that the opening had been unsuccessful. He brushed dust from his sleeve as he rose. He looked up at the figure hovering above the village on the back of the fire eagle. That was your opening, he said. I want you to know that I am being generous in acknowledging it. Madara descended. He stepped off the fire eagle. He floated in the air across from Naruto. He was tall. His hair was long and black and untouched by death. His eyes were the Rinnegan, both of them with concentric circles burning at full output. I am Madara Uchiha. I led the Uchiha clan in the era of the founding. I fought Hashirama Senju to a standstill at this place. I died of natural causes at the age of 112. I have returned through methods that were unavailable to me in life, and I have returned with the express purpose of taking your existence apart. I want you to know my name before I begin. I know your name. I have known your name since I learned to read. Begin whenever you wish. The fight that followed was the largest event in the recent history of the elemental nations. Madara opened with perfect Susanoo. The construct rose around him in layers of golden chakra. The first layer was the standard Susanoo skeleton. The second was the armored form. The third was the perfected form, 150 meters tall, with 2 faces and 4 arms and 2 enormous swords. The construct rose above the eastern district of Konoha and blotted out the sun. The civilians in the streets below fell to their knees. The shinobi defending the perimeter abandoned their posts and ran for the inner village, because the only correct response to the appearance of a perfect Susanoo was retreat, and the senior officers were ordering it before they had finished registering the visual. Naruto rose to the level of the perfect Susanoo's chest. He folded his hands in front of him. He fired a Kamehameha at the center of the construct. The wave was the size of a small temple. It struck the perfect Susanoo's ribcage. The ribcage cracked across 2 armor plates. Madara, inside the construct, felt the impact through the chakra link and reformed the cracked plates. Naruto fired a second Kamehameha at the reforming plates while they were still reknitting. The reformation failed. The perfect Susanoo fractured down its left side. Madara abandoned the Susanoo. He emerged from it through the chest plate, leaving the construct to collapse behind him. He attempted limbo. The limbo technique generated invisible shadow clones that existed in a parallel layer of reality, undetectable by ordinary senses. Madara had developed the technique in his elder years. He had used it to kill an enemy without the enemy ever seeing the strike that arrived. He generated 4 limbo clones. They moved into position around Naruto from 4 directions. Naruto extended his absorption detection sense outward. He had developed it over the previous year, a sensing variation of his absorption ability that read chakra at a molecular scale. It detected the limbo clones by their chakra displacement signature. He fired 4 death beams in 4 directions at angles that did not correspond to any line he was looking along, and each beam struck one of the limbo clones in a place Madara could not see. The clones dispersed. Madara stopped using limbo. He attempted instead the infinite Tsukuyomi. This was the technique he had been holding for the climax of his return. He had brought the Hashirama cells in his body to full activation. He had flooded his own chakra system with senjutsu reserves. He rose into the air to the level above the village rooftops. He cast his Rinnegan on the moon. The moon, 3 days into the lunar cycle, lit up with a red light. The light spread across its full surface. The infinite Tsukuyomi seal, which Madara had implanted on the moon in his earlier life through a method that had involved the original sage of the six paths techniques, activated. The seal projected a casting beam outward from the moon to the entire facing hemisphere of the planet. The beam struck Konoha. It struck the surrounding countries. It struck every land within line of sight of the moon, across the elemental nations, in towns and villages, in farmsteads and forests. 90% of the human population fell into the dream. They fell in the middle of whatever they had been doing. The farmers fell in their fields. The merchants fell at their stalls. The shinobi at the borders fell at their posts. The dream took them in one wave, and the dream was the dream Madara had designed. Each person living their personal ideal life, suspended in a moment of perfect satisfaction, while the Tsukuyomi extracted the chakra of the dreaming population and channeled it back to Madara's body. Naruto remained standing. He looked up at the lit moon. He considered it. He raised both hands. He gathered ki between them. The Kamehameha he assembled was the largest he had ever produced. It was the full output of a body that had absorbed two-tailed beasts, the chakra of a Sannin, the Rinnegan of two separate path sets, the curse mark energy he had taken from Sasuke at the valley, the cellular techniques of half the Akatsuki, the Sharingan of Obito Uchiha, and the natural reservoir of the nine tails he had been born with. The wave grew between his palms until it was a column of light wider than the village beneath him. The column had its own weather. Air moved into it from all directions, drawn by the pressure differential. The light it gave was a blue-white that shifted in color as the energy density approached the limit of what air could support. He looked up at the moon. He fired. The wave traveled from the surface of Konoha to the surface of the moon in a single second. It struck the moon at the center of its facing hemisphere. The moon, which had been lit red by the Tsukuyomi seal, brightened to a blinding white. The wave passed into the moon's surface. The wave traveled through the body of the moon. The wave passed out the other side and continued on into the deep dark beyond. A crack opened across the moon's full diameter. It ran from pole to pole. The Tsukuyomi seal, which was a surface-anchored structure, fractured across the line of the crack. The casting beam interrupted. Across the elemental nations, 90% of the human population woke up at once, gasping, with the memory of a dream they could not hold on to. Madara stared at the cracked moon. For the first time in his very long existence, the expression on his face was the expression of a man who had calculated everything and had arrived at a result he did not understand. "What?" he said. "Are you?" "I am what happens," Naruto said. "When the perfect organism is dropped into an imperfect world, the world adjusts to the organism. The organism does not adjust to the world. You are a piece of the world. I am the adjustment." He closed the distance. Madara fought to the last. He had too much pride to surrender, and he had too much accumulated technique to run out of options. He attempted the Rinna rebirth. Naruto absorbed the technique mid-channel. He attempted a final Susanoo strike, regenerating the construct in a single second through Hashirama Cell forced output. The Susanoo's primary sword came down at Naruto's head in an arc that should have separated the boy from his torso. Naruto caught the sword in his palms. He held it. He held a sword the size of a high-rise building between two open palms, and the sword did not move. Madara's Susanoo, on the other end of the sword, strained against the catch. The chakra output of the construct rose. The sword still did not move. Naruto pushed back. The Susanoo collapsed inward along the line of force, and then it collapsed entirely, and Madara fell through the air to the level of his opponent. He stood in the air in front of Naruto. He was without a Susanoo for the first time in his living memory. He was without his most spectacular techniques. He was an Edo Tensei body, immortal by the rules of the technique that animated him, and he knew with absolute clarity that the immortality would not save him. "You cannot kill me," he said. "This body is sustained by a jutsu, not a life. The jutsu is infinite. The jutsu is sustained by the chakra of the man who cast it. The man who cast it is Kabuto Yakushi, currently underground in a cave system 300 miles east of this position, performing the maintenance hand seals. When I am finished with you, I will travel to him. I have already mapped the route. The trip will take less than an hour. Then I will linger here as long as I can. You will not have me cleanly. I will have you the way I choose to have you. The choice is mine. Naruto placed both hands on Madara's chest. He pulled. The absorption that followed was the most ambitious he had ever performed. He was extracting an Edo Tensei-anchored body, a body sustained not by its own life force, but by an external chakra thread reaching across hundreds of miles to the caster. Naruto did not pull at the body's surface. He extended his absorption ability inward through the body until he found the thread, and then he extended it across the thread itself, traveling along the chakra connection toward the caster. And then he reversed the flow of the thread. Madara, inside the body, felt himself becoming mortal. The Edo Tensei sustainment failed. The cells of the body, which had been frozen in their state of permanent renewal, began to age. They aged in real time. The black eyes lost their glow, the skin developed lines, the hair grayed, the muscles thinned. Madara Uchiha, in the air above Konoha, lived through 112 years of decay across 3 seconds. For the second time in his existence, his expression was something close to fear. "I am," he said. "You were," Naruto said. The body crumbled. The cells that had been forced into life by the Edo Tensei completed their aging, then completed their decay, then resolved into ash. The wind took the ash in different directions. The pieces scattered across the surface of Konoha and the surrounding fields, and there was nothing left to bury, and nothing left to mourn, and nothing remaining of Madara Uchiha that could be meaningfully said to have ever existed at all. Naruto watched the ash go. "At last," he said. The voice was the same it had always been, but there was something underneath it that had been there only on rare occasions. A real challenge. He turned east. He flew. He arrived at Kabuto Yakushi's cave system in 40 minutes. Kabuto had felt the Edo Tensei thread fail. He had felt the chakra reverse along the connection. He had immediately understood what was coming and had spent the 40 minutes preparing every defense available to him, which was considerable. He had reached his sage mode by the time Naruto entered the cave. The sage mode Kabuto wore was the expression of his teacher's research taken to its final form. He had integrated DNA from nearly every member of the Akatsuki into his own flesh. He had layered Hashirama cells through his bones. He had developed new chakra natures and absorbed sage chakra from the White Snake Sage Cave. He was, by his own estimation, the most refined chimera ever produced by the science of human modification. He was, in his other estimation, the perfect culmination of a lineage of research that stretched back to Orochimaru and forward into a future Kabuto had begun, in his quieter moments, to plan. Naruto walked into the cave. He stopped a few meters from Kabuto. He looked at him. He waited. "I am the assembled product," Kabuto said. His voice was layered with snake hiss undertones. "I have the cellular structure of every member of my teacher's organization. I have integrated DNA from Sasori, Hidan, Kakuzu, Deidara. I have White Snake Sage Chakra. I have Hashirama cells. I am, in any meaningful sense, the most complete chimeric being in shinobi history. I have been preparing for your arrival for the past 2 months. I have studied every technique you have used. I have constructed a defensive matrix against your absorption ability that should Kabuto. Yes? I have cells from Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Frieza, and King Cold written into the architecture of my existence. I absorbed the 3 tails. I absorbed the 1 tail. I absorbed your teacher twice, once partially and once completely. I hold the Rinnegan of 2 separate users. I hold the Sharingan of Obito Uchiha. I hold 5 Kakuzu hearts. I hold the chakra of every Akatsuki member you have just listed, taken from each of them at the moment of their respective ends. I unraveled the Edo Tensei of Madara Uchiha by reversing the casting thread along its full length. I cracked the moon less than 2 hours ago, and you are telling me about your assembled DNA. Kabuto was silent for a moment. You are an impressive amateur, Naruto said. I want you to take that as a compliment in the most devastating sense available. The fight took 90 seconds. Kabuto opened with his Sage Mode speed advantage, attempting to close the distance and apply a chakra-disrupting touch to Naruto's chest. The touch never connected. Naruto absorbed Kabuto's Senjutsu chakra at the moment of contact, drawing the natural energy out of the modified cells before the strike could complete. Kabuto's Sage Mode dropped. Without it, his speed dropped. Without his speed, his pre-prepared techniques became visible in advance. He threw every technique he had inherited. The hidden shadow snake hands, the Hashirama-derived wood techniques, the Deidara clay he had been growing in his own arm for emergencies, the Kakuzu-style heart switching. He threw all of them in sequence and then in combination, and Naruto absorbed the sources of each one in the same sequence, dismantling Kabuto's combat capacity from the inside while the man was still attempting to deploy the techniques. By the 72nd second, Kabuto was kneeling. By the 83rd, his snake features had retracted into something resembling his original human form. By the 89th, Naruto's hand was on his head. The absorption finished at second 90. What fell to the cave floor was a thin man with gray hair and round glasses, who had spent his life inheriting other people's research and had reached, at the end of the inheritance, a result that did not include him. Naruto stood over the body for a moment. "You were a competent man," he said. "You should have applied yourself to a different line of work. The work you chose was, at its core, the work of becoming someone else. You spent your entire life rehearsing other people's techniques. The rehearsal was thorough. The performance was less than the rehearsal suggested." He turned to leave the cave. Black Zetsu emerged from the wall. It came out of the rock at the edge of Naruto's vision, the way it always emerged, unfolding from a shadow into a humanoid silhouette of pure black. Its yellow eyes glowed. It opened its mouth. "Naruto Uzumaki," it said. Its voice was a layered chorus of every dead schemer it had whispered to across the centuries. "I have been watching you for 14 years. I have been the architect of every event this world has experienced for over 1,000. The shinobi system is mine. The sage of the six paths was a mistake. The descent of his chakra into the clans was my correction. Madara was my puppet. Obito was my refinement. Kaguya is my mother and my purpose, and the conclusion of a plan that has been in motion since before the first letter of any human language was written. You are a deviation. You are a deviation that arose outside my system, and the deviation must." Naruto reached forward with 2 fingers. He pinched Black Zetsu between his thumb and his index finger. He was looking at the cave wall, at a vein of mineral that had caught his attention while Black Zetsu was speaking. He kept his eyes on the mineral as he applied pressure. Black Zetsu's structure, which had survived 1,000 years of empires and wars and the ambitions of its dozen handlers, came apart between 2 fingers in less than a second. The black ichor that constituted its body splattered across the cave floor. "You were a footnote," Naruto said to the splatter. "Across every century, across every scheme, across every generation of carefully managed disaster, you were the parenthetical at the bottom of the page. You should have considered earlier whether your plan was actually as inevitable as you believed yourself to be. The plan was an arrangement of chairs in a room. The room was not the world. The world is what arrived after the arrangement was complete." He stepped over the remains. He left the cave. The world beyond the cave was the world after Madara, after Black Zetsu, after every name on every list. The world had a cracked moon, visible above the eastern horizon, and the crack ran pole to pole. It was the new permanent feature of the night sky. Children born after that day would grow up unable to imagine a moon without it. Songs would be written about it. Religions would be founded around it. Some of them would correctly identify the cause, others would not. None of it would change the visual fact of the crack, which would be there every night, every cycle, every generation. Naruto rose into the air. He turned west. He flew home. Time passed. The first year after the fall of Madara was the year of recoveries. The villages that had been damaged in the various battles, Konoha, Suna, Iwa, rebuilt. The dead were buried. The displaced were resettled. The shinobi system, which had been on the verge of collapse during the Akatsuki's most active period, restabilized. New treaties were drafted. The 5 Kaji met in person for the first time in a decade and signed documents that did not ultimately change very much, because the only document that mattered now was the one written in the cracked moon, and that document was unsigned and unwritable and read by everyone who looked up at the sky. Gaara returned to Konoha at the end of the 2nd year. He arrived as the Kazekage. He had been confirmed in the position 2 months earlier. He was younger than the role traditionally required, but the Sand Village was rebuilding, and Gaara was the only candidate with the combination of absolute will and genuine concern for the population that the rebuilding required. He came with a small honor guard. He came with no agenda beyond the visit itself. He had told his council that the visit was a diplomatic gesture. The truth was that he wanted to see his friend, and he had used the diplomatic framing because the council would not have understood the actual reason. He met Naruto on a rooftop at evening. The rooftop was the one above Naruto's apartment. It had become, across years, Naruto's preferred vantage point. There was a small table on it now with 2 chairs, both wooden, both old. A teapot was on the table. 2 cups were beside the teapot. Naruto poured. Gaara took the cup. He drank. Neither of them spoke for some time. The cracked moon was visible on the horizon, even though the sun had not finished setting. "Are you finished?" Gaara said eventually. "I am finished with the immediate inventory," Naruto said. "I am uncertain whether the world will generate new problems that require my attention. It has historically tended to. And if it does, I will attend to them. And if it does not," Naruto looked at the cracked moon, "then I will find something else to find interesting." Gaara nodded. They drank their tea. The wind came from the desert and carried warmth off, and it brushed the awning above their table, and the awning made a small sound that was, in the larger silence between them, a kind of music. "I have been sleeping," Gaara said. "How is it?" "The first year was hard. The second year less hard. I am beginning to dream. The dreams are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "The dreams I had as a child. The dreams of the Shukaku. I had assumed those were what my dreaming would default to, in the absence of other content. They are gone. The Shukaku is gone. The default has been replaced." "What is the default now?" "It is whatever you have built in the years since the Shukaku left. The dreams are the architecture of the inner life that has grown in the empty space. You have been working hard on the inner life, by all accounts. The dreams will be the result of that work. They will not be the result of what was there before." Gaara absorbed this. He drank more of the tea. "I have dreamed of my mother," he said. "The real one. The one who died. I had thought I would never have access to her, and I have been finding her in pieces in the dreams." "That sounds correct. It is unfamiliar. It will become familiar." Gaara nodded again. They sat. The sun moved further down. The cracked moon brightened in proportion. The 2 of them, in their separate ways, were the closest thing either of them had ever had to a friend, and neither of them used the word. Because neither of them required the word, because they understood the situation without naming it, Sasuke Uchiha came to Naruto a year and a half later. He came with a question. He had been carrying the question for 5 years. He had not asked it because he had not known whether he wanted the answer, and he had not been sure, until recently, what he would do with the answer once it arrived. He found Naruto at the Eastern Training Ground. That's the one Naruto preferred for solo work. It was mid-morning. The grass was wet from an early rain. Sasuke was wearing the new Konoha Jonin uniform he had earned 6 months earlier. His Mangekyo Sharingan was deactivated. He had, over the previous year, learned to leave it off most of the time. Naruto. "Sasuke, I have a question. Ask. At the valley, the fight, could you have killed me?" Naruto considered him. "Yes." "Any of the times we have met since?" "Yes." "Why have you not?" Naruto looked at him for a long moment. The morning light was on Sasuke's face. The face was older than it had been 5 years earlier. It had lines around the eyes that Sasuke had grown into, and the lines suited him, and they were the lines of a man who had spent the last 5 years building something that did not require the destruction of a person he resented. "Because you were angry at the right things," Naruto said. "You were angry at the wrong people, because the right people were difficult to reach and the wrong people were convenient. The source of the anger, however, was always legitimate. I do not end legitimate anger. I redirect it." Sasuke was silent. "Are you still angry?" Naruto asked. "Yes." "At what?" "At the system that ordered my brother to do what he did." "And what are you doing about it?" "I am rebuilding the system from inside it. I have been on the Konoha Council since the spring. I have introduced 3 pieces of structural reform. 2 have passed. The 3rd is in committee. I am making sure no order like the one given to my brother can ever be issued again. That is what I am doing with the anger now. That sounds like the right use of it. I think so. They stood in the wet grass for a moment. Itachi would approve, Naruto said. I want you to know that. The man I met in the forest in his last conversation would approve of what you are building. Sasuke turned his face slightly. He did not respond aloud. He did not need to. After a moment, he nodded once and turned and walked back toward the village, and Naruto watched him go. And the morning sun caught the back of his uniform and made the Konoha leaf gleam. The Hokage came to Naruto a season later. Hiruzen Sarutobi was in his late 70s now. He had retired the year before, after Tsunade Senju had been retrieved from her self-imposed exile by Jiraiya, and Tsunade had taken the hat for 2 years before passing it back to Hiruzen during a council reorganization that had been less smooth than anyone had hoped. Hiruzen wore the hat now, but he wore it lightly, and he had told the council in private that he intended to retire again within the year and that the next retirement would be the final one. He came to Naruto with a question. He framed it as a village concern. He framed it as a matter of policy. He sat down across the table from Naruto in Naruto's apartment kitchen and asked, with the formal tone of a man asking a question he had rehearsed, whether Naruto intended to remain in Konoha or to move beyond its borders. Naruto read the actual question beneath the official one. You are asking whether I am a resource or a resident. I am asking what you want after everything. I want to know what you actually want. Naruto was silent for a long time. I want, he said slowly, to be present at whatever comes next. I am aware that this is an unusual answer for an organism of my construction. Beings built for perfection are not typically built for investment in the imperfect environment around them. My case appears to be an exception. I find the village tolerable. I find its people occasionally surprising. Gaara writes good letters. Sasuke has built something interesting, and I would like to see what it becomes. You, old man, are one of the few people I have met in this life who spoke to me before he was afraid of me and after, and you changed your approach for neither part of the interval. That counts. He looked out the kitchen window. The cracked moon was on the horizon, even in the late morning, a pale line against the pale sky. I am staying, he said. I am staying because staying is what I have chosen. That is the first choice in my life that belongs entirely to me, and I would prefer to honor it by following through. Hiruzen set his pipe on the table. He looked at the boy across from him for a long time. The boy was no longer a boy by the conventional measurement. He was 19 now. He had stopped aging at a rate that matched the calendar 4 years earlier. His face had the proportions of a man in his late teens and would, by all available data, continue to have those proportions for a length of time the demographic statistics had no model for. He sat at the kitchen table holding a cup of tea. He looked in that moment like a young man holding a cup of tea. Thank you, Hiruzen said. For what? For staying, for all of it. For not taking the village apart when you could have on any of the days you considered it. You are welcome. I never thanked you properly. I have been meaning to. I have been afraid to. I know. You knew. Of course. The old man laughed. He laughed for a while. It was a real laugh, and there was relief in it, and there was age in it, and there was the particular sound of a man releasing something he had been holding for many years. When he was finished, he picked up his pipe. He filled it. He lit it. He took a long draw and exhaled toward the ceiling. I'm going to retire next month, he said, for the last time. I have selected my successor. I will not tell you who. I want to see your face when the announcement is made. You wish to surprise me. I have spent 27 years failing to surprise you. I would like to succeed once before I'm done. I will allow it. The old man laughed again. He drank his tea. He talked of small things. A grandchild who had passed his academy entrance exams, a feud at the council that had been rumbling for months, a new tea house that had opened in the southern district and that he intended to recommend. Naruto listened. He responded where appropriate. The conversation ran for 2 hours, and at the end of it, the old man embraced him at the door, and the embrace was the first time anyone had embraced Naruto Uzumaki in either of his lives. and Naruto returned the embrace with the awkward exactness of a being who had read about the gesture in books and had never previously had occasion to perform it. When the old man was gone, Naruto sat at his kitchen table for a long time. He sat there until the afternoon ended. He sat through the evening. He sat through the moonrise. He drank tea. He thought about nothing in particular, which was a state he had rarely permitted himself in his current incarnation. He found to his interest that the state was tolerable. He found further that it was something close to pleasant. The final scene was the one on the Hokage monument. It was 3 months after the conversation with Hiruzen. Hiruzen had retired and his successor had been named, and the successor had been Sasuke Uchiha, which had surprised everyone in the village except Naruto, who had identified the choice 3 weeks earlier from the patterns of council meetings. Sasuke had taken the hat with the dignity of a man who had spent his life building toward an authority he had once intended to overthrow. The investiture had been held in the rebuilt arena, and the entire village had attended, and Naruto had sat in the back with his hands folded and had nodded once, briefly, to the new Hokage as the hat was placed on his head. After the investiture, Naruto had walked up to the top of the monument. The monument had 4 faces now: the 4th, the 3rd, the 5th, Tsunade, and the 6th, Sasuke, was being carved into a fresh face on the eastern side. Stonemasons were at work on it. The face was rough still. It would take 6 months to finish. Naruto sat above the unfinished 6th face on a flat stone outcropping he had used for years. He had a small cup with him. He had a small pot. He had been keeping the pot warm for the last hour with a thread of his own ki. He poured the tea. He held the cup in both hands. He looked at the village below. The village was alive with the sounds of evening. Cooking smells from the western district, children calling in the streets, water moving in the canal that had been added to the eastern reconstruction, wind in the trees of the inner forest. There were lights in every window. The lights were the same lights that had been in those windows for 50 years, and they would be in the same windows for the next 50, and the windows themselves would change, but the lights would persist, because lights were what people lit when they came home. And the village was always being come home to. He looked at the sky. The cracked moon was rising on the eastern horizon. The crack was at 3 days past full. It ran pole to pole, and it caught the late sunlight along the line of the fracture, and it gleamed. It was permanent. It would never be repaired. It was the largest signature any human or creature had ever left on the world, and he had left it without intending to leave any signature at all, because he had been performing a function and the moon had been in the path of the function. The signature was an accident. The accident was the most public fact of the world now. He thought about the moon. He thought about what was on it. He thought about whether in 50 years, in 500, in 5,000, anyone would remember why the crack was there. He concluded, after some consideration, that the memory would fade, that the names of the people involved in the cracking would become legends, then myths, then names in books no one read, then names in books that did not exist, that the crack itself would persist past all of that, and that the persistence was, in some way he had not fully articulated, the closest thing he had ever had to a child. He drank his tea. The sun finished setting. The cracked moon rose into full view above the eastern horizon, and the village below it lit its evening lights one by one, and on the face of the monument, above the unfinished 6th face, a being who had been given 2 lives in 2 universes, and had used the 2nd one to remove every threat from a world that had not asked him to, and had, in the end, decided to remain in that world because remaining was what he had chosen, sat with his tea in his chosen village and his enormous, settled, impossible life, and asked nothing more of the universe than this. He sat for a long time. The wind moved. The lights of Konoha continued to come on, one by one, until the whole of the village was a constellation laid out along the floor of the valley. Naruto Uzumaki, who had been perfect Cell, who was the answer to a question the world had not known how to ask, who had ended every name that needed ending and had chosen to stay where he was, finished his tea. He set the cup beside him on the stone. He folded his hands in his lap. He was, by every measurement available to any being who had ever measured anything, perfect. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, he was also so content. He sat in the dark above his village, beneath the cracked moon, and watched the lights, and the lights watched back, and he stayed.
And that's the story of the most terrifying reincarnation in shinobi history. If this video hit different, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, because we've got more stories where the protagonist makes every villain look like an appetizer. See you in the next one.